LoveLore Library. Chapter 172. At night, when Su-Rui came to the courtyard of the Zinzheku on time again, Su-Wan didn't wait for him for the first time and slept alone with her clothes on. The simple and crude bed was covered with a delicate brocade quilt. Su-Wan was curled up and lying on it, her whole body wrapped in the brocade quilt. "Wife?" Su-Rui leaned over the bed and gently called Su-Wan. The person on the bed did not respond. Was it because she was too tired and slept like a log? Su-Rui raised his hand and gently stroked Su-Wan's hair, then gently leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. "Go to sleep." After dropping this sentence, he turned around, opened the dilapidated window, and disappeared in a flash. After Su-Rui left, Su-Wan slowly opened her eyes. She sighed, stretched out her arm from the quilt, and her eyes fell on her wound. In the evening, she deliberately told Bai Mama to light sandalwood incense in the room, and Su-Wan deliberately did not change the dressing after dinner. Su-Rui was too keen. Su-Wan was afraid that he would find out about her injury, so she could only use this trick. She didn't want him to worry and feel sorry for her. This small injury really didn't matter to her. From under the pillow, Su-Wan dug out the medicinal powder that Bai Mama brought back from the Imperial Hospital. She carefully took off her robe, revealing her injured arm. At this time, the wound had stopped bleeding, and the handkerchief used to bandage the wound had been changed in the afternoon. Su-Wan gritted her teeth and used her other hand to gently and attentively untie the white cloth wrapped around the wound. At this moment, her wrist was suddenly grabbed by someone. Su-Wan was startled and raised her eyes in panic to meet Su-Rui's bottomless eyes. "You want to lie to me? Su-Wan, you're still too inexperienced." Even though the room was full of the smell of sandalwood, it still couldn't cover up the smell of blood on her body. And just before leaving, Su-Rui deliberately leaned over and kissed Su-Wan. The matter of hiding Jinshuang medicine under her pillow was immediately discovered by Su-Rui. He pretended that he didn't notice anything and left in order to catch her and hide her alone. Seeing that she couldn't hide it from Su-Rui, Su-Wan could only smile bitterly at him. "You're really too keen, I can't deceive you." Su-Rui didn't speak. He silently took the Jinshuang medicine beside Su-Wan, lowered his eyes, and skillfully and carefully helped her change the medicine powder on the wound. "Don't do it again." After doing all this, Su-Rui lifted his head, his profound gaze fixated on Su-Wan's eyes. "As long as I'm here, I won't allow anyone to hurt you. I can't and you can't either. Because you don't just belong to you, you're also mine." Before he finished speaking, Su-Rui had already lowered his head and fiercely kissed Su-Wan's lips. Su-Wan didn't move, letting Su-Rui's overwhelming kisses hit her. Su-Rui's kiss didn't last too long. There were sounds of footsteps and breathing outside the door. Su-Rui's gaze darkened and he pulled the robe at the side and wrapped Su-Wan inside. "Who is it? Get in here." Clang! Outside the wooden door, there was the sound of something falling to the ground. Then, Bai Mama's face turned pale. She rolled in. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Bai Mama's small body rolled directly to the front of the bed. Looking at the man sitting on it, she trembled and moved back, greeting Su-Rui with a frightened and uneasy voice. In the evening, Bai Mama planned to help Su-Wan apply the medicine, but in the end, she was refused by Su-Wan. She said she would apply it before going to bed at night. As the saying goes, eat the king's salary and bear the king's worries. Bai Mama took so much money from Su-Wan and naturally wanted to perform well, so she took advantage of the night to prepare some things to change the medicine and planned to come over to help. Who knew that outside the door, through the gap in the wooden door, she would see a man on Su-Wan's bed being intimate with her. At that moment, Bai Mama's breathing became disorderly. She suddenly remembered that Steward Wang said that this Miss Su's identity was not ordinary, so who would be the man who came to meet her in the middle of the night? Bai Mama didn't dare to think and was about to turn around and sneak away. Who knew that at this time, the man on the bed suddenly turned around and shouted coldly. Seeing the man's face, Bai Mama was so scared that she peed her pants. His Majesty, that was His Majesty. As a result, the miserable Bai Mama was so scared that her whole body went limp and she could only obediently roll, and at this time, Bai Mama, who was kneeling on the ground, had mixed feelings in her heart. No wonder Steward Wang was so polite to this Miss Su. It turned out that her backer was the Emperor. Fortunately, she had been conscientious these days and did not neglect this great aunt. But she seemed to have seen something she shouldn't have seen. Will she be silenced and dismembered by 5 horses? Seeing Bai Mama on the ground being scared by His Majesty, Su Wan couldn't help but tug at Su Rui's sleeve. Your Majesty, this is Bai Mama of Zinzheku. These days, this slave has been here thanks to her care. Oh. Is that so? Su Rui raised his eyebrows. When he heard Su Wan mention Bai Mama's identity, the coldness in his eyes immediately dissipated a lot. It's so late, what are you doing here? Replying to your Majesty, this old slave came to see Miss Su. For her injury. Bai Mama's voice was still very frightened. Seeing that she was still holding the white cloth used to bandage the wound in her hand, Su Rui believed her words. Mama, you are really considerate, but Zhen has personally bandaged Xiao Wan's wound. You can leave. Also, from today onwards, after nightfall, no one in Zinzheku is allowed to approach this place without authorization. Mama, do you hear me clearly? Yes, yes. This old slave will obey your Majesty's decree, please rest assured. This old slave knows what to do, this old slave will leave now. While speaking, Bai Mama had already turned around, trembling, and scrambled to escape. Seeing that Bai Mama had gone far away, Su Rui turned around and looked at Su Wan with a serious face. You are injured, how can you rest well here? I will take you to the Zhonggong. No one dares to approach that place on weekdays. You go there to recuperate for a few more days and recover from your injury. I will tell Wang Yi to take care of the Zinzheku, and it will not delay your plan. Seeing Su Rui say this, Su Wan thought about it and simply nodded. It just so happened that she needed Wang Yi to help her investigate the details of Su Bingyue in the next few days. That Su Bingyue was not a simple girl. Then let's go. Seeing Su Wan nod, Su Rui immediately smiled. He pulled up the brocade quilt on the wooden bed and wrapped Su Wan's whole body in it. I will carry you back, you should rest well for me now. Yes, Your Majesty. Su Wan's whole body was tightly wrapped in Su Rui's arms. She looked up and could only see Su Rui's streamlined and beautiful chin. In the night, Su Rui's figure sneaked like a ghost. The guards of the entire imperial city were practically non-existent to him. Because she was wrapped in the brocade quilt, Su Wan could not feel the coldness of the autumn night. Leaning on Su Rui's chest, thinking of his order to rest well, Su Wan finally closed her eyes with peace of mind. Central Palace, Qinkuan Palace. Ever since Su Rui came to this world, there were no palace maids serving in the Central Palace. Usually, all the affairs of the Central Palace were directly arranged by Wang Yi's capable servants to complete. After putting Su Wan on the dragon couch and watching her sleep, Su Rui then summoned Wang Yi over and had him remove the servants in the warm room and bedroom for the next few days. These few days, only Wang Yi was left to serve in these 2 places. Although the servants in the Central Palace were 100% reliable people, Su Rui did not want others to destroy his and Su Wan's world of 2 people. The reason why he left Wang Yi behind was just to leave someone who could pass on a message. Hearing Su Rui's instructions, Wang Yi naturally nodded and did as he said. Your Majesty, Miss Su these few days. Wang Yi originally wanted to ask if he wanted to find someone to take care of Su Wan these few days. Who knew that before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by Su Rui. "Oh right, Wang Yi, go to the Imperial Hospital tomorrow morning and help me bring the best medicine from the Imperial Hospital. You have to do this carefully and don't let others suspect you. This servant understands." Chapter 173. The weather at the end of October, an autumn rain and a cold wind. Su Wan leaned on the soft couch in the side study of the warm room. She flipped through Su Bingyue's travel guide card that Wang Yi found for her with one hand. The card recorded Su Bingyue's birthplace, life experience, and family situation in detail. This girl turned out to be a concubine's child like Yan Yuqing, but she was very favored at home, and it was Su Bingyue who took the initiative to enter the palace this time. It could be seen how dissatisfied and ambitious this girl was with the current situation. Su Wan's eyes flashed. Originally, she planned to use Yan Yuqing to be the vicious female supporting character, but now, it seemed that Su Bingyue was more suitable. According to the plot of the original world, by this time, Yan Yuqing should have long been moved by His Majesty and wholeheartedly wanted to step on Lu Guiren to fly up the branch. In contrast, Su Bingyue, who appeared halfway, was more malleable. Su Wan closed the name card and looked at Su Bingyue's movements in the past 2 days that Wang Yi had specially found someone to record. She was now closely following Yan Yunuo's footsteps and would go to the Imperial Hospital every few days to make her presence known in front of Lu Mushuan. It seemed that Yan Yunuo was able to settle the 500 silver taels so quickly because Su Bingyue instigated her to borrow it from Lu Mushuan. In this way, Yan Yunuo's urgent need was solved and Su Bingyue had many opportunities to enter the Imperial Hospital to get close to Lu Mushuan. This woman's scheming was not ordinary, but the more such a person was, the more Su Wan liked her. Unknowingly, Su Wan had finished looking through Su Bingyue's daily whereabouts in recent days. She raised her hand and was about to close the file when she suddenly felt a warmth on her back and a heavy and embroidered cloak was gently draped over her back. Steward Wang. Su Wan thought that Wang Yi, who had been serving on the side, had helped her put it on, but as soon as she looked up, she saw Su Rui's smiling eyes. It turned out that Wang Yi had already disappeared, and Su Rui, dressed in a dragon robe, was standing behind her. "Be careful not to catch a cold," Su Rui said while picking up the file by Su Wan's hand. "Your arm hasn't recovered yet, don't carry such heavy things." Su Wan. General Su, can you tell me what of the world is light in your eyes? Feathers. Su Bingyue. After putting the cloak on Su Wan, Su Rui casually picked up the file that Su Wan had just read and quickly glanced at it. Who is this Su Bingyue? There was no Su Bingyue in the storyline mission that Su Rui accepted. That's right, she was a passerby who had nothing to do with the main storyline. In the original plot, on the night that Su Wan and Yan Yunuo were punished by Empress Shu, because Su Wan fainted in the middle of the night, Yan Yunuo hugged her and knocked on the palace door for most of the day. In the end, Yan Yunuo begged in front of Empress Shu, and Empress Shu magnanimously pardoned their crimes. Later, Yan Yunuo brought the unconscious Su Wan back to the Shangfu Bureau and took care of Su Wan in the side room where they lived for most of the night before she woke up. Therefore, in the original plot, they didn't last until dawn, and they didn't meet Su Bingyue who was cleaning the royal road. But now, because of Su Wan's arrival, everything has changed. While Su Wan changed her and Yan Yunuo's fate, she also changed the fate of too many people, such as Su Bingyue, Bai Mama, and others. Of course, Su Wan's classmates' things are trivial. Our General Su directly sent 2 concubines and a large group of people to the Yellow Springs Road. That's a big move. I think this Su Bingyue can be used, she has great use. Su Wan tightened the cloak on her body and looked up at Su Rui with a smile. What do you think? It's good that you like it. Su Rui liked to see Su Wan toss and turn. He liked it no matter how she tossed and turned. Of course, if he encountered some accident that Su Wan couldn't toss, then General Su would not hesitate to make a move. Ruthlessly destroying a flower and whatnot was completely trivial. Then I'll start the next step. Su Wan said and took out Qin Xingbei's letter from the brocade bag she carried with her. I'm going to reply to Qin Xingbei and then create some opportunities for him and Su Bingyue. Hearing Su Wan mention Qin Xingbei, Su Rui's eyes flashed slightly. I have approved the memorial for Qin Xingbei's promotion. He has been very proud of himself these days. But no matter how nice Qin Xingbei sounds right now, he is only the captain of the Imperial Guards. I don't think that Su Bingyue will necessarily like him. That's not true. Su Wan shook her head and the smile on her face became more intense. The reason why the male lead of a world is called the male lead is naturally because he has his own excellence. Although I have never seen Qin Xingbei, according to the original plot, he is a handsome and extraordinary young man with an imposing appearance. Compared with Lu Muxuan's gentleness and elegance, such a man is more likely to attract women. Handsome and extraordinary, imposing appearance. Hearing Su Wan praise Qin Xingbei like a flower, General Su couldn't help but lower his eyes. So what if he is the male lead? Isn't he still at our mercy? If we want him to live, he will live. If we want him to die, he will die. Yes, of course, Your Majesty, you are the most powerful. Your Majesty, you have already broken through the sky. Su Wan looked at Su Rui with a smile. When she said these words, she didn't feel guilty at all. That's right, our family's men are so greasy that they don't want to. Hearing Su Wan's praise, Su Rui couldn't help but raise the corner of his lips. Xiao Wan, look at your arm, it's so troublesome to write. I'll help you reply to Qin Xingbei. It's settled. While speaking, without waiting for Su Wan to agree, Su Rui had already walked to the desk on the side and spread out a piece of paper. Wang Yi, come and grind the ink for Zhen. Yes. Wang Yi's voice came from afar. After a while, he quickly walked to the desk and skillfully helped Su Rui grind the ink. Other people's emperors have beautiful women around them, but our family's emperor only has a middle-aged uncle, Chief Steward Wang. The next morning, as usual, Su Bingyue would go to the Shanggong Bureau every morning according to Liao Xi's instructions to see if there were any newly dyed silks and satins there. The Shanggong Bureau was not far from the Shangfu Bureau. After walking through a secluded path, she could see their courtyard. Su Bingyue had long been familiar with this road. Usually, no one would pass by here at this time, but today, when Su Bingyue passed the path, she bumped into a little eunuch who was hurrying along. Seeing that the other party was wearing the uniform of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Su Bingyue didn't dare to argue with the other party. The little eunuch seemed to be in a hurry and disappeared in the blink of an eye. What bad luck! Su Bingyue rubbed her shoulder that was hurting from the collision. The moment she looked down, she saw a brand new letter on the ground. This is. She hesitated to pick up the letter. There was a line of words written on it, Imperial Army North Camp, Qin Xingbei. Qin Xingbei. This name sounds nice and the handwriting on the letter is also very beautiful. Who wrote this letter? Looking at the direction of the little eunuch from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, this letter should have come from the harem. The harem forbids all palace maids and guards from coming and going. If it wasn't a palace maid. Su Bingyue's hands were trembling. She composed herself, walked to the corner of the path and looked around. Seeing that the little eunuch from the Ministry of Internal Affairs did not come back, Su Bingyue took a deep breath and carefully opened the letter. Life is like this. It is very likely that it will be completely changed because of a person we meet at a certain moment or a decision we make. Su Bingyue, as Su Wan expected, opened the letter because she was ambitious and scheming. If the person who picked up this letter was changed to Yan Yunhua, I'm afraid that Yen Yunhua would foolishly stand in place and wait for the owner to find her. If she couldn't wait for the owner, she would try her best to find the owner. Of course, if Su Wan encountered such a thing, she would probably turn a blind eye to such a letter. Chapter 174. Imperial City Imperial Guard, North Guard Camp. In everyone's eyes, Chen Xingbei, who had just been promoted to the head of the Imperial Guards, was flushed with success these days. He was recognized by his boss and His Majesty at such a young age. His future was simply limitless. However, surrounded by everyone's envious, jealous, and hateful eyes, Chen Xingbei maintained his indifference on the surface. In fact, he was actually very annoyed in his heart. Ever since he entrusted Xia Shunzi of the Ministry of Internal Affairs to send the money and the letter to Su Wan, there had been no news from the Zinzheku. Chen Xingbei was absent-minded all day. In his memory, Su Wan was still the same as she was many years ago, a small, white, and clean girl who liked to chase after him and call him Big Brother Xingbei, Big Brother Xingbei. At that time, he knew that Su Wan was his future wife. Although he was only a little more than 2 years older than her, Chen Xingbei already had the heart of a little man at that time and knew that he had to protect her for a lifetime. Unfortunately, when he was 9 years old, the Su family moved away because of the family's decline. Since then, there had been no news and the two families had lost contact. In the past few years, Chen Xingbei had never forgotten the little girl with clear eyes in his memory. Occasionally in his dreams at midnight, he could always hear a tender and pleasant voice constantly calling, Big Brother Xingbei. After Chen Xingbei was recommended to the court by his father at the age of 16, many people in the capital came to his door to matchmake, but they were all rejected by Chen Xingbei. Although he knew that the chance of meeting Su Wan again in the vast sea of people was very small, Chen Xingbei still didn't want to give up. The capital could be said to be very big, but it could also be said to be very small. He always looked forward to one day being able to reunite with that girl on the street. This was a scene that Chen Xingbei had imagined countless times. As a result, not long ago, when he was inspecting the palace, he really saw Su Wan again. She was following a group of palace maids, wearing the aqua-blue palace dress of the Shangfu Bureau. On her waist hung the jade pendant that she had never left since she was a child. The jade pendant was originally a pear and was a token of engagement between their two families. Although it was only a glance, Chen Xingbei immediately recognized that it was his little sister Xiao Wan. She still had a pair of clear and beautiful eyes. He would never mistake her. At that time, Chen Xingbei's heart was particularly happy, but because of each other's identities, he couldn't immediately come forward to acknowledge each other. However, in the vast sea of people, he finally found Su Wan. Was this what other people called fate? Chen Xingbei thought that the reunion between the two would come soon, but the news of the Shangfu Bureau's accident followed. Sigh. Chen Xingbei sighed in his heart again. At this time, a familiar figure walked in quickly, Captain Chen. Seeing Chen Xingbei's face, the man smiled and squeezed his eyes. Captain Chen, someone is looking for you. Chen Xingbei was taken aback. He instinctively thought that it was Xia Shunzi from the Department of Internal Affairs. His complexion changed slightly and he immediately got up. Seeing him so anxious, the person who came to report couldn't help but pull his arm and said with an ambiguous expression, Captain Chen, although this is the front palace guard camp, it is also the inner court of the Imperial City. You should be careful when you come and go. Don't get caught. Ah. Hearing the other party's words, Chen Xingbei was confused. When he quickly walked out of the guard camp's lounge, he was stunned when he saw the fair-faced woman wearing a servant's uniform in the courtyard. Miss, you are looking for me. Although the other party was a woman disguised as a man, it could be seen at a glance, okay? Of course, in the Imperial City, Sometimes people would pretend not to see it even if they saw it, and pretend not to be able to guess it even if they guessed it. Who made this place to be the Imperial City? The noon sun was shining brightly. The bright sunlight shone on Qinshingbei's handsome face. He was wearing a royal blue guard uniform, carrying a sword, and a jade crown to tie his hair. His whole person looked extremely heroic and vigorous. Especially the tone of his voice at the moment, the charming voice made people feel particularly comfortable listening to it. Before seeing Qinshingbei, Su Bingyue always felt that a man like Imperial Physician Liu was already very good-looking, but seeing the heroic Qinshingbei, Su Bingyue's heartbeat immediately accelerated. This was the feeling of falling in love at first sight. Love at first sight, heart beating like a deer. You are Qinshingbei, Big Brother Qin. Su Bingyue restrained the light in her eyes and looked at Qinshingbei with an innocent and shy face, her voice weak and mellow. I am Qinshingbei, may I ask who you are? I am Su Wan's good sister, Su Bingyue. Big Brother Qin, you can call me Bingyue. Su Bingyue smiled brightly at Qinshingbei. When she opened the letter in the morning, she found that the letter was actually written by Su Wan. Su Bingyue only thought that this matter was too coincidental at the time, but after reading the contents of the letter, she learned that Su Wan's fiancé turned out to be the head guard of the Imperial Guard camp. Moreover, looking at the tone of Su Wan's correspondence with him, this person seemed to have a very good family background and had a lot of room for promotion. At that time, Su Bingyue couldn't help but start to plan. If she helped Su Wan deliver this letter, then she would help two people pass a message. Maybe one day when Su Wan came out of the Zinzheku and counterattacked, or this man was promoted, she would be able to get some benefits from them. That's right, Su Bingyue appeared here with this idea in mind. According to common sense, palace maids couldn't have too close contact with the guards, and the people of the Shangfu Bureau didn't have the time and courage to come here directly. In the original plot, Su Wan and Yan Yunhua asked the courageous Yan Yuqing to deliver the letter, but now Su Bingyue directly changed into an inner maid's uniform and dared to come directly to the guard camp. This woman's boldness was evident. You are Xiao Wan's sister, did she ask you to find me? When Qinshingbei heard Su Bingyue's words at this time, his tone was very excited. Is she okay? Did she write back to me? The letter is here. Su Bingyue reluctantly took the letter out of her arms and handed it to Qinshingbei with a smile. Big Brother Qin, you can read it slowly. I will come back in 2 days when I have time. If you have anything to say to Sister Xiao Wan, you can write it down and I will hand it to her for you. Really, thank you so much. Hearing Su Bingyue's words, Qinshingbei couldn't help but smile gratefully at her. This smile was gentle and charming, making Su Bingyue's mind sway. Such a perfect man, it's really a pity to be together with Su Wan. Although she was already moved by Qinshingbei in her heart, Su Bingyue didn't show it too obviously on the surface. Big Brother Qin, I have already taken a big risk coming here. I am going back now. Let's meet again in 2 days. N. Hearing Su Bingyue say this, Qinshingbei's eyes flashed. He also thought that Su Bingyue's trip was indeed not small. After pondering for a while, Qinshingbei handed a token to Su Bingyue. This is the North Camp's access token. With this thing, it will be more convenient for you to come here next time. At least, no one in the camp will make things difficult for you. Big Brother Qin, is this for me? Su Bingyue's eyes sparkled as she took the token handed over by Qinshingbei. When her fingertips touched his slender and warm big hand, she immediately retracted her hand as if she had been electrocuted. Big Brother Qin gave it to me, I will keep it well. Then I will leave first. Su Bingyue looked at Qinshingbei reluctantly, but the man in front of her was staring at the handwriting on the letter in a daze, as if he was completely fascinated by it. Su Bingyue secretly gritted her teeth and turned to leave with a displeased expression. Qin Xingbei was not aware of Su Bingyue's departure. He just stared blankly at the smooth and flowing handwriting, his whole person feeling joy from the bottom of his heart. This was written to him by Xiao Wan. Xiao Wan's handwriting was really too beautiful. The words were like the person, causing Qin Xingbei's eyes to soften. Speaking of which, those floating words seemed to be written by His Majesty the Emperor. Chapter 175. Shangfu Bureau. When Yan Yunhua finished all the work at hand, she saw Su Bingyue quietly coming back from the back door. She was still wearing the inner servant uniform. Bingyue, where did you go? Yan Yunhua immediately walked quickly to Su Bingyue, took her hand and pulled her to a corner, whispering, "Where did you go? Liao Xi was still looking for you just now." What? Hearing Yan Yunhua's words, Su Bingyue's face changed. "Sister Yunhua, what should I do? Quickly save me. Now you know how to be anxious. I'll help you deal with it. Why don't you tell me what you're doing dressed like this? Do you want to die?" Yan Yunhua looked at Su Bingyue with a worried face. She didn't care about working for her, but she was very worried about the safety of this sister. After Su Wan's accident, Yan Yunhua no longer wanted to see anything happen to the people around her. Su Bingyue's eyes flashed. "I went out to see a friend. He is in the front palace, so I can only change into the inner servant uniform and sneak in." "You really have guts, lass." Yan Yunhua shook her head and sighed, then raised her hand and patted Su Bingyue's shoulder lightly. "Okay, while no one else is watching, hurry up and change your clothes." "Yes, I know." Su Bingyue quickly ran back to her room. When she was changing her clothes, she saw the token that Qin Xingbei gave her. Her eyes softened and she carefully held the token in front of her with both hands. She felt that the token still carried Qin Xingbei's aura, which made Su Bingyue blush uncontrollably. 3 days later. When Su Bingyue came to the North Guard camp again, Qin Xingbei had been waiting for a long time. "Sister Bingyue, this is my reply to Xiao Wan, and this." Qin Xingbei handed a small bag of broken silver to Su Bingyue's palm. "These are for your hard work." Seeing the silver that Qin Xingbei handed over, Su Bingyue's pretty face turned cold. "Does Brother Qin treat me as an outsider? I am Sister Xiao Wan's good sister. How can I accept Brother Chen's silver? What kind of person do you think I am?" Seeing that Su Bingyue was angry, Qin Xingbei's handsome face also flashed with embarrassment. He had never believed that there would be any real sisterly love in the harem, but now it seemed that the relationship between Su Bingyue and Su Wan was really good. Qin Xingbei remembered that Su Wan had told him in her reply that she had a few particularly good sisters in the harem. Su Bingyue should be one of them. "Don't be angry. I was rude. I apologize." Qin Xingbei looked at Su Bingyue apologetically. Seeing him take the initiative to apologize to her, Su Bingyue smiled and blinked her beautiful eyes. "Forget it, I'll forgive you this time. Don't do it again." The crisp voice carried the tone of a spoiled child. If it was another man, he would have already felt something. Unfortunately, Qin Xingbei was born with a one-track mind when it came to feelings, and his reaction was slow, so at this time, he did not notice Su Bingyue's special feelings for him. Coming out of the guard camp, Su Bingyue hummed a tune all the way. In her opinion, Brother Qin seemed to be a little closer to her. She didn't believe that with her own means, she couldn't compare to Su Wan, who was half dead in the Zinteku. The two people could communicate now, but they couldn't see each other. When Su Wan couldn't hold on in the Zinteku one day, she could take the opportunity to comfort Brother Qin. After that, everything would definitely fall into place. With such a happy mood, Su Bingyue once again returned to the Shangfu Bureau from the back door with a cheerful face. This time, she was not seen by anyone. Returning to her room and changing her clothes, Su Bingyue carefully put Qin Xingbei's letter under her pillow. She was not in a hurry to deliver the letter. Let Su Wan wait a few more days, After tidying up her makeup in the bronze mirror, Su Bingyue wore a water blue palace dress and slowly walked out of the side room where she lived. As soon as she went out, she saw Yan Yunuo's bright smiling face. Sister Yunuo, what's the good news? Why are you so happy? Su Bingyue looked at Yan Yunuo's smiling face. Her face was curious, but she was silently cursing in her heart. Could it be that Liao Si promoted Yan Yunuo? That Liao Si also became more and more confused as she got older. Her mind was not bright anymore. Yan Yunuo was diligent, but she was really stupid. Such a person could not survive in the harem for a long time. Bingyue, look who's back. At this time, Yan Yunuo couldn't detect the strange look in Su Bingyue's eyes at all. She just grabbed Su Bingyue's hand with excitement and joy and pointed to the courtyard door. That was seeing the familiar figure slowly walking over from the door. Su Bingyue's face, which had been well concealed, finally had a cold expression for a moment, but she quickly put on a simple and immature smile. Sister Xiao Wan, you're back. That's right, Su Wan is back. Looking at Su Bingyue forcing a smile in front of her, Su Wan just smiled faintly. Yeah, do you feel surprised? Yeah. Su Bingyue's smile was a little forced. Sister Xiao Wan, how did you come out of Zinzheku so soon? Su Bingyue remembered that Su Wan was sent to Zinzheku for a month. How long has it been? How did she come out so soon? This is simply incredible. This is all thanks to Sister Yuqing. No, now I should call her Beauty Yen. Su Wan carefully worded her words. Hearing her words, Yan Yunuo and Su Bingyue were both stunned. They didn't know that Yan Yuqing was conferred the title of beauty by His Majesty in the Shangfu Bureau. In fact, this incident just happened yesterday, and not many people in the harem know about it now. Of course, this was also the timing that Su Rui and Su Wan had planned. The two of them had long seen through the personalities of Yan Yuqing and Su Bingyue. Once Yan Yuqing took the throne, she was bound to find a reliable and loyal person like in the original plot. In the original world, she chose Su Wan, and this time, she still chose Su Wan. Yan Yuqing knew that Su Wan was more clear-minded than Yan Yunuo. The most important thing was that when she saw Su Wan being punished for Yan Yuqing, she also felt that Su Wan was a person who valued friendship and righteousness. Yan Yuqing decided to personally plead for Su Wan in front of His Majesty. In this way, Su Wan would also be grateful to her for a lifetime and work like a cow or a horse for her. At this time, in Jinfangzhai, Yan Yuqing was bathing under the service of two palace maids, lying powerlessly in the bathtub. Yan Yuqing looked at her white and sparkling skin and was in a trance for a moment. She remembered that His Majesty was very enthusiastic last night. Why didn't there be any traces left on her body? If it weren't for the fact that she felt weak when she woke up this morning and the bright red color on the dragon bed, Yan Yuqing would have really thought that everything last night was a dream. In fact, she did have an untraceable wet dream. How could Su Rui touch her? Speaking of which, being the emperor was really good. What didn't the imperial city have? In the imperial hospital, there were many special medicines for His Majesty to use when he doted on his concubines. Among them, there was a kind of spice from the western regions that gave people the illusion of a dream. So last night, Yan Yuqing was actually happy alone for the whole night, while Su Rui and Su Wan studied the next plan in the study until the latter half of the night. In the end, the two people directly hugged each other and fell asleep on the soft mattress in the warm room. As for the pool of blood on the dragon bed, it was specially prepared by Steward Wang. As the omnipotent steward of the imperial household, Uncle Wang was always the best. The harem was a place where there were no secrets and could never hide secrets. It was only noon. Yesterday, His Majesty went to Wenhuaju, but he didn't favor Lu Guiren. Instead, he favored the palace maid by Lu Guiren's side and bestowed the title of beauty on the little palace maid. The news had already spread to every corner of the harem. At this time, there were those who watched the excitement, those who gloated, and those who grieved for the death of a rabbit. Of course, the most exasperated one was Lu Guiren. She didn't expect that she would be fooled by Yan Yuqing, that damn girl. Did she really think that she could always be favored because of her youth and beauty? Chapter 176. Su Wan came out of the Zinzhaku. This was the best news for Yan Yunhua, but what Yan Yunhua didn't expect was that Su Wan returned to the Shangfu Bureau only to pick up her belongings because she had been given by His Majesty to be Beauty Yan's personal palace maid. Although everyone will not be together in the future, you can often go to Jinfangzhai to see me. Beauty Yan will also welcome you very much. Su Wan packed her things in the room while smiling at Yan Yunhua and whispering. In just one night, such a big change happened. Su Wan came out and Yan Yuqing changed from a palace maid to a young mistress. The harem was like this. There were legends and stories every day. Beauty Yan. Yan Yunhua was not used to such a form of address, but the rules in the harem were strict. She must call Yan Yuqing this way when she sees her in the future. At this time, Su Bingyue's mood was also very complicated. She had long felt that Yan Yuqing's thoughts were heavy and she was not as gullible as Yan Yunhua and Su Wan. She just didn't expect that girl to really step on her master's position and fly up the branch overnight. She can be considered to have some ability. However, His Majesty has so many women. She is favored now, but can she be favored for a lifetime in the future? As for His Majesty, what does His Majesty look like? Su Bingyue hasn't seen it yet. But when she thought of Qin Xingbei's appearance in her heart, Su Bingyue couldn't help but feel a sweetness in her heart. No one in this world can compare to Big Brother Chen's handsome and heroic appearance. Especially the way he dressed as a guard and equipped with a sword, it was just like those unparalleled heroes written in the picture books she saw when she was a child. Unfortunately, Su Bingyue's gaze darkened and a somewhat complicated light swept over Su Wan. The hero in her heart was her fiancé. This world is really unfair. Bingyue. Bingyue. Su Wan's voice interrupted Su Bingyue's contemplation. It turned out that she thought too much and stared at Su Wan for too long, which attracted Su Wan's attention. Bingyue, what are you looking at? Oh, I'm looking at your jade pendant. Su Bingyue raised her hand and pointed to the jade pendant that Su Wan always wore on Su Wan's waist. She had peeked at Su Wan's reply to Qin Xingbei that day and naturally knew that this jade pendant was the token of their engagement. Sister Xiao Wan, your jade pendant is very beautiful. Bingyue also likes it very much. Can you tell me where you bought it? I want to buy one too. Su Bingyue's gaze flickered as she stared at Su Wan's jade pendant, her tone sincere and soft. This jade pendant. Su Wan's gaze softened a bit and her tone became even more gentle. This is what I've been carrying since I was young. It's a very important token. I see. Since it's so precious, Sister Xiao Wan, you must take good care of it. Su Bingyue stared at Su Wan's jade pendant again and noted down the size of the jade pendant in her heart. She knew that she couldn't be in a hurry. Even if Su Wan came back, she was still in the harem and couldn't marry Qin Xingbei immediately. She still had a long time to prepare and many opportunities. Su Wan pretended not to see Su Bingyue's gaze. She caressed the jade pendant and revealed a gentle smile. However, that smile made Su Bingyue feel that it was an eyesore, Jinfangzhai. When Su Wan brought her things to Jinfangzhai, the palace maids and servants were cleaning the courtyard. Sister Su. As soon as Su Wan entered the door, the palace maids and servants all respectfully came forward to greet her. The people of Jinfangzhai had heard in the morning that their master's personal palace maid was called Su Wan. Although they had never seen Su Wan, the set of royal blue palace clothes that symbolized the status of a palace maid on Su Wan's body constantly reminded others of her identity at this time. Everyone has worked hard. Su Wan nodded at the people in the courtyard and asked softly, "Where is Master? Is he resting?" Replying to Sister Su, "Master is playing chess in the palace hall." Su Wan nodded and ordered a little palace maid to put her things away. She quickly walked into the door of Jinfangzhai. At this time, Yan Yuqing, who was wearing a bright crimson palace dress, was idly playing chess with a little palace maid. "Su Wan greets Master." Su Wan walked into the inner room and bowed to Yan Yuqing. Hearing Su Wan's voice, Yan Yuqing paused and raised her head to look at her with joy. "Xiao Wan, you're finally here. Come and play chess with me. It's so boring to play chess with them. No one dares to win against me. That's because Master's chess skills are superb. No one is your opponent." Su Wan smiled at Yan Yuqing. It must be said that Yan Yuqing was also a very intelligent person. Although she was an unfavored concubine's daughter since childhood, she was proficient in the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Unfortunately, no matter how outstanding she was, she would never enter Master Yan's eyes in the Yan family. "Su Wan, there are no outsiders here. You and I don't need to be so distant." Seeing Su Wan's respectful attitude towards herself, Yan Yuqing was actually very satisfied in her heart, but she kept telling Su Wan not to be so distant. Only in this way could she show her approachability. There is a difference between master and servant. Su Wan doesn't dare to be presumptuous, not to mention that Master took the trouble to rescue this servant from the Zinzheku. This servant will work like an ox or a horse for Master for the rest of her life and die without regrets. Su Wan also opened her mouth to speak such sincere words. Coupled with her sincere and touched appearance at the moment, Yan Yuqing naturally wouldn't have any doubts about Su Wan. Shortly after Su Wan arrived at Jinfangzhai, Wang Gonggong brought a group of palace servants to deliver the reward that His Majesty gave to Beauty Yen. Before leaving, he also ambiguously revealed that His Majesty would come to Jinfangzhai for dinner in the evening. Yan Yuqing was naturally overjoyed to receive this news. At this time, she didn't have her own direct subordinates and only Su Wan could be trusted, so Yan Yuqing couldn't help but discuss with Su Wan how to entertain His Majesty at night. "Master, when this servant was in the Shangfu Bureau, I heard that His Majesty likes to eat spicy things. Why don't we instruct the small kitchen to make a few more such dishes?" "Spicy?" Yan Yuqing frowned. She was most afraid of eating spicy food in her life, but since His Majesty likes it. "Okay, Su Wan, you handle this matter. I can rest assured if you handle it." In order to get His Majesty's favor, Yan Yuqing also went all out, but what made her both painful and happy was that His Majesty really came at night, and as Su Wan said, His Majesty really liked to eat spicy food. "This dish is very delicious." When Su Rui entered Jinfangzhai, he always had a cold and handsome face. It wasn't until Su Wan, who was waiting on the side, personally picked up a piece of spicy chicken for him that a smile slowly appeared on Su Rui's face. "Yuqing, how did you know that Jin likes to eat spicy food?" The most taboo in the harem was to privately inquire about His Majesty's preferences. Yan Yuqing looked at Su Rui with a gentle smile on her face. "So your Majesty likes to eat spicy food?" Chia actually didn't know that these dishes are Chia's favorite dishes on weekdays. Thinking that your Majesty might come over, Chia ordered people to prepare what she likes to eat. "I want to share my favorite dishes with your Majesty." It has to be said that Yan Yuqing's mouth was like a lotus flower. She could even say that the dead was alive. No wonder she could deceive Yan Yunhua again and again in the original world. So that's how it is. Hearing Yan Yunhua's reasonable and pleasing explanation, Su Rui smiled faintly and raised his hand to pick up a few pieces of meat for Yan Yuqing. Since you like it, eat more. And Zhen will reward you with this plate, eat it all. Yan Yuqing. Yan Yuqing finally understood what it meant to reap what she sowed today. Seeing Yan Yuqing flattered to eat the whole plate of spicy meat, Su Rui's eyes finally showed a satisfied smile. Little guy, the spiciness won't kill you. Seeing His Majesty staring at her with a faint smile while eating, Yan Yuqing didn't dare to show that she was spicy at all. She burst into tears from the bottom of her heart, but at the same time, she pretended to eat happily in front of Su Rui and didn't have enough to eat. With great difficulty, she endured the pain in her throat and the discomfort in her stomach to eat all the dishes. Before Yan Yuqing could perform in front of His Majesty, Su Rui had already rushed to speak first. It seems that beauty is really amazing, you can eat spicy foods so much. Zhen is ashamed of my inferiority. Hearing Su Rui's praise, Yan Yuqing immediately smiled shyly. Your Majesty is too kind. In fact, this concubine doesn't want to eat spicy food at all. Fortunately, the meal was finally over. Yan Yuqing was secretly swearing in her heart that she would never prepare these dishes again next time. As a result, she hadn't finished swearing in her heart when she heard Su Rui say again, since Beauty Yan's taste is so similar to Zhen's, in the future, your Jinfangzhai's meals can be directly collected from the imperial kitchen. Zhen will instruct people to prepare more meals that match your taste. Beauty, you will definitely like it very much. Yan Yuqing looked at Su Rui with tearful eyes. Thank you for your Majesty's kindness, this concubine is very grateful. Chapter 177. After dinner, Yan Yuqing's throat was a little hoarse, but even so, she still endured her physical discomfort and wanted His Majesty to stay in Jinfangzhai for the night. Unfortunately, after dinner, Su Rui left with Wang Yi without saying a word. After that, he ordered people to send a large number of rewards, but these rewards were meaningless in Yan Yuqing's view. What she wanted to keep was His Majesty's person and heart, not these gold, silver, and jewelry. Master, are you okay? Seeing Yan Yuqing drinking water with a bad expression, Su Wan hid the smile that flashed in her eyes and looked at her with concern. I'm fine. Yan Yuqing shook her head. There were many people in the inner palace and she didn't know if there were other people's spies here. Yan Yuqing couldn't eat spicy food since she was a child, but others didn't know about this and Yan Yuqing didn't intend to let anyone know. Su Wan, His Majesty is very satisfied with today's dinner. You can choose one thing from today's rewards as my reward to you. Thank you, Master. Su Wan saluted Yan Yuqing. She knew that the more she lowered her stance and listened to Yan Yuqing, the more she would have a sense of superiority as a master. At night, a few low-ranking palace maids were left to keep watch in the dormitory. Su Wan returned to her room early. She was Yan Yuqing's personal palace maid and the place where she lived was actually next to Yan Yuqing's dormitory. It was a relatively spacious wing room. As soon as Su Wan entered the door, she saw Su Rui, who was dressed in regular clothes, sitting on her bed with a smile. Wife, please comfort me. Su Rui blinked his beautiful eyes and looked at Su Wan with an aggrieved expression. It was all his wife's bad idea to play along with Yan Yuqing. General Su really had enough. Fortunately, Yan Yuqing was also a perceptive person and wouldn't really pester people. This was much better than that crazy woman Jiang Yu in the last world. Here, this is for you, comfort your wounded heart. Su Wan came to the bed and threw a gadget she got from Yan Yuqing into Su Rui's hand. General Su, wife, don't be so shameless. Wife. Su Rui pulled Su Wan over and let her sit in his arms. When are you going to take the next step? Then why hasn't Su Bingwei given you Qin Qingbei's letter? What do you think she's waiting for? Wait for what? Su Bingyue was waiting for an opportunity. Thinking of this, Su Wan looked up and smiled at Su Rui. Su Bingyue has been waiting for a chance. Your Majesty, you should be considerate and give her a chance. Su Rui, what does this have to do with me again? Seeing Su Rui's blank expression, Su Wan couldn't help but smile again. General Su, General Su, you have killed countless enemies on the battlefield, you can also strategize in the imperial court, and you are even an expert in the business world. Unfortunately, only in the field of love and the harem, you really don't understand the women in the harem. The magic of their brain circuits and the power of their imagination are absolutely beyond your imagination. That the next day, Jinfangzhai was still bustling with noise and excitement. Yan Yuqing dressed up early in the morning, waiting for His Majesty to come here again. Unfortunately, she waited for a day and finally received the news that His Majesty had gone to the newly promoted Beauty Qin. It was said that this Beauty Qin was also young and slender. For the next few days, His Majesty never came to Jinfangzhai again. Yan Yuqing ate the spicy dishes sent by the imperial kitchen every day. After a long time, her anger rose and her face was covered with red pimples. The more it was like this, the more impatient she became. In this vicious cycle, the pimples on her face grew even longer. Without a moving beauty, how could she please His Majesty? Yan Yuqing immediately ordered Su Wan to go to the imperial hospital and invite Lu Muxuan, who had the best medical skills. This was the second time Su Wan had seen Lu Muxuan. He looked more gentle and indifferent than the last time they met, and there was also a hint of joy between his brows. Su Wan guessed that there might be new progress between him and Yan Yunhua. This was really worthy of celebration. The opportunity to counterattack the male lead is right in front of you. You are only one step away from success. Come on, Imperial Physician Lu. Perhaps it was because of Yan Yunhua, but Lu Muxuan did his best to treat Yan Yuqing. After he finished seeing the patient and wrote a prescription, Su Wan immediately sent someone to follow Fu Lu to the Imperial Hospital to get the medicine, while she personally sent Lu Muxuan out of the entrance of Jinfangzhai. No need to send me off. Lu Muxuan stopped at the entrance of Jinfangzhai and turned to look at Su Wan, smiling faintly at her. You go back and take care of your beauty. I still have to go to Xuning Palace to treat concubine Liang. Oh, then Imperial Physician Lu, take care. Su Wan was not surprised to hear Lu Muxuan's words. Concubine Liang had always been a restless time bomb in the harem. She might suddenly make a move at any time and disrupt Su Wan's plan. The safest way to do this was to make her sick and let her stay in bed without time and energy to plan anything. It must be said that Imperial Physician Lu's medical skills were also very brilliant, but how was it compared to Physician Ci's medical skills? In the world of the Great Xia dynasty, Su Wan had learned how to use poison from Physician Ci, and her method of using poison was already very ingenious. Of course, this golden finger could only be used here with a similar background, because the more powerful the poison, the more ingredients needed. Su Wan had Wang Yi search the imperial city's warehouse for several days before she finally prepared a colorless and odorless chronic poison, and this poison was naturally used on concubine Liang. Su Wan would not underestimate anyone in this world. Even a rabbit bites when it's anxious. Not to mention there were so many living people. Even if it was a mission enforcer who was familiar with the plot, the situation of stumbling and being schemed against in the mission world happened from time to time. Although Su Wan had not experienced such an encounter, she had always been very careful in her actions and would not put herself in any danger. That it must be said that during this period of time, the harem was really not peaceful. Since the tragic death of Noble Yu and the murder of concubine Shu, the women in the harem were trembling in fear. His Majesty had not sent anyone to serve him in bed for many days. Everyone was quietly observing the changes, and no one was willing to be the first to stand out. Especially after the Empress Dowager was grounded in the palace of benevolent and peaceful, the atmosphere in the harem seemed to have become particularly oppressive. It wasn't until Yan Yuqing was conferred the title of beauty that everyone's hearts, which had been silent for a period of time, finally began to stir. Subsequently, one after another, with the ascension of Yan Yuqing, several new people were conferred the title of beauty and noble. These people were all very ordinary beauties, and some were even just palace maids, but they were all favored by His Majesty. Without exception, these new people were all very young and very inexperienced. Could it be that His Majesty's taste has changed? Did His Majesty get tired of eating big meals and change to eating plain porridge in side dishes? Just as everyone in the inner palace was speculating about this matter, Yan Yunhua and Su Bingyue took advantage of their shift at the Shangfu Bureau to go to Jinfangzhai to visit Yan Yuqing. At this time, the acne on Yan Yuqing's face had reduced a lot, but her complexion was still very poor. Seeing that Yan Yunhua and Su Bingyue had come, Yan Yuqing naturally called Su Wan to entertain the two people very warmly, and also very affectionately asked the two people to accompany her to eat together. This was the first time that the four sisters sat down to eat together after Yan Yuqing was promoted to a beauty. Halfway through the meal, Su Bingyue mysteriously moved closer to Su Wan and took out a letter from her arms. "Sister Xiaowan, what do you think this is?" "This is..." Seeing the letter in Su Bingyue's hand, Su Wan's eyes lit up. Could this be Xin? Su Bingyue made a shushing gesture and stuffed the letter into Su Wan's palm with a smile. "What are you two talking about so mysteriously?" "Su Wan, what is that in your hand?" Yan Yuqing, who was sitting at the head of the table, had naturally noticed Su Bingyue's abnormal behavior. Seeing her acting so mysteriously, Yan Yuqing couldn't help but feel a little suspicious, so she asked without hesitation. Hearing her question, Su Bingyue's face flashed with a hint of pride, while Su Wan hesitantly took out Chen Xingbei's letter. "This is this servant's letter. It's written by this servant's fiancé." Yan Yuqing and Yan Yunhua looked at Su Wan in surprise at the same time. Obviously, both of them were shocked by her big revelation. "Su Wan, you hid it from us so hard. Now that you've been discovered by us, why don't you tell us the truth?" Yan Yuqing originally thought that Su Bingyue wanted to secretly win over Su Wan, but now it seemed that it was not the case. Yan Yunhua also seemed very interested in Su Wan's fiancé who suddenly appeared. Under everyone's gaze, Su Wan had to tell the story of herself and Chen Xingbei word by word. Hearing such a tortuous story, Yan Yuqing couldn't help but sigh. "Su Wan, you are really lucky. Guard Chen is also a good man who is infatuated with love." "Yes." Hearing Yan Yuqing's words, Su Bingyue on the side couldn't help but sigh and say, "This servant secretly ran to the guard camp to do something this time. Fortunately, I met Big Brother Chin. Otherwise, I would have died miserably if I was discovered. Big Brother Chen is young, promising, and elegant. He and Sister Xiaowan are really a match made in heaven. If I can also meet such an ideal husband, I won't exchange the position of imperial consort even if you give me the position of imperial consort. You little girl." Hearing Su Bingyue's words, Su Wan showed an embarrassed look and whispered weakly, "How can Big Brother Chen be as good as you say? Why not?" Hearing Su Wan's words, Su Bingyue's eyes flashed and she pretended to say jokingly, "If Sister Xiaowan doesn't want him, then I want him. Such a good man can't be found even with a lantern." "Damn girl, what nonsense are you talking about?" Hearing Su Bingyue's words, Su Wan's face became even more embarrassed and her hands unconsciously clutched Chen Xingbei's reply. Yan Yunhua on the side only thought that this was a little joke between sisters and didn't care. On the contrary, Yan Yuqing thoughtfully paid attention to Su Wan and Su Bingyue's reactions and expressions. Chapter 178. The emperor hadn't come to Jinfangzhai for many days. Yan Yuqing managed to cure her face with great difficulty and took good care of her body every day. She even looked for imperial physician Lu to prescribe a lot of medicinal herbs. Now, she had slowly gotten used to eating spicy food and there were no more pimples on her face. But at this time, the news that Beauty Qin had been ordered to die came out from the harem. Just like the tragedy of Jingyun Palace that day, His Majesty killed several people in succession after Beauty Qin's death. Almost all the people who had been favored by His Majesty during this period were murdered. Yan Yuqing was the luckiest one. When she heard the news from the chamberlain's mouth, Yan Yuqing's whole body went limp. "Master, be careful." Su Wan, who was on the side, immediately supported Yan Yuqing. Su Wan. Yan Yuqing's face was pale and her lips trembled. "Su Wan, what should I do?" It wasn't until this moment that Yan Yuqing felt afraid of Dongfang Yao's cruelty and ruthlessness. "Such a tyrant, if you lie next to him, can you fall asleep?" At this time, the dispute in the harem once again caused a big storm in the court, but Su Rui had always turned a blind eye to the admonitions of the imperial censors. Rui Wang Dongfangli, who had just returned from abroad not long ago, naturally knew about this matter. Dongfangli was Dongfang Yao's cousin and the two brothers had always had a good relationship. Dongfangli was also the only vassal king who was allowed to live in the capital. This time, Dongfangli was forced to enter the palace by a group of old ministers to admonish the emperor. On the surface, he spoke righteously, but in fact, he wished that Dongfang Yao could be a little more cruel. Then, when Dongfang Yao completely lost the support of the people, he could take the opportunity to rise to the throne. Of course, as a wily and circumspect vassal king, Dongfangli had always been expressionless. He would not show any trace of attachment and desire for power in front of Dongfang Yao. He had been working hard to portray himself as a carefree prince who liked to play around all over the place. So when he entered the palace this time, Dongfangli didn't mention anything about the old ministers and just drank and chatted with Su Rui about women. Dongfangli investigated the women in the harem very clearly. Of course, he had never seen these newly promoted beauties before, but Dongfangli also knew that almost all the newly favored beauties were killed by Dongfang Yao. Now it seemed that there was only Jinfangzhai's Beauty Yen left. What kind of outstanding beauty was that Beauty Yen? Dongfangli was indeed a little curious about the owner of Jinfangzhai and even planned to make friends with her. Just when Dongfangli and the emperor finished drinking and were about to leave the palace, he happened to meet Yan Yuqing, who had just finished offering incense, at the entrance of the imperial city Buddha Hole. Ever since Yan Yuqing learned of the death of Beauty Qin and the others, she had been uneasy. After all, she was a young girl. When she was favored, she thought she was the greatest in the world. Now that she saw the emperor's cruelty, how could she not be afraid? Ever since Yan Yuqing learned of the death of Beauty Qin and the others, she had been uneasy. After all, she was a young girl. When she was favored, she thought that she was the greatest in the world. Now that she saw the emperor's cruelty, how could she not be afraid? Yan Yuqing, who was at a loss, had to ask Su Wan for help. In her opinion, the only person around her who could discuss countermeasures with her was Su Wan. Yan Yuqing naturally did as Su Wan said. The final result. Su Wan didn't know how much Yan Yuqing felt at ease, but Yan Yuqing and Dongfangli met at the entrance of the temple in the imperial city according to Su Wan and Su Rui's expectations. At this time, Yan Yuqing's face was pale and she had the posture of a sickly beauty. Dongfangli learned from the servant behind him that this was Beauty Yen. He immediately stepped forward to greet her with a gentle expression and asked about the little beauty in front of him. After all, Yan Yuqing was the daughter of a commoner who had just entered the palace. She had only heard of Rui Wang's name before. She didn't expect to see such a handsome and gentle man in person today. Compared with His Majesty the Emperor who had recently become more and more brutal, Dongfang Li's favorable impression of Yan Yuqing's sword, seeing that the two of them regretted not meeting each other earlier even though they met for the first time. Su Wan, who was standing behind Yan Yuqing, couldn't help but lower her eyes. What was the place with the most infidelity in the world? It was naturally the harem. The more hierarchical you were and the less men there were, the more these concubines climbed the wall. So, relatively speaking, the man who was cuckolded the most was naturally His Majesty the Emperor. Today, a concubine had an affair with an imperial doctor. Tomorrow, an imperial concubine had an affair with a guard. Maybe in a few days, the Empress would join forces with her cousin to rebel. In short, the profession of the Emperor, who would know? Ever since Yan Yuqing and Dongfang Li got to know each other, Dongfang Li would send people into the palace to bring some trinkets to Yan Yuqing from time to time. Every time he entered the palace, he would deliberately take a detour to Jinfangzhai to take a look. Of course, all this was done very secretly, so it wouldn't be discovered at all. Well, in fact, Su Rui had deliberately opened the door of convenience long ago and turned a blind eye to all of Dongfang Li's behavior. Since ancient times, there had only been one emperor who had worked so hard to pair up his concubine and his brother. It was definitely a limited edition. Yan Yuqing and Dongfang Li quickly embarked on the route set in the original plot under Su Rui's deliberate connivance. At this time, Yan Yunhua and Lu Muxuan, who became acquainted because of the 500 Tales of Silver, also developed very smoothly. Although Lu Muxuan's personality was usually gentle, he was still very serious in the emotional world. After being in contact with Yan Yunhua for a long time and affirming his own ideas, Lu Muxuan began to hint at Yan Yunhua again and again. He was afraid that his feelings would scare Yan Yunhua, and at the same time, he was afraid that Yan Yunhua would not accept him. Fortunately, although Yan Yunhua was a little slow, she finally understood Lu Muxuan's intentions and slowly accepted him in her heart. That ever since Yan Yunhua and Lu Muxuan became a pair, Su Bingyue, who was next to her, began to become more and more anxious. During this period, she still helped Su Wan and Qin Xingbei deliver a letter every once in a while. In fact, there were several times when Su Wan wanted to deliver it herself, but Su Bingyue tried her best to persuade her to dispel that idea. Watching Su Wan and Qin Xingbei's relationship become more and more stable, Su Bingyue's heart became more and more impatient. At this time, a major event suddenly happened in Jinfangzhai. His Royal Highness Rui Wang was openly fooling around with someone in Jinfangzhai. And the person who was caught by His Majesty on the spot turned out to be Su Wan. When Yan Yunhua learned of this news, Su Wan had already been locked up in the Imperial Clan Court and His Royal Highness Rui Wang was also imprisoned. Su Wan already had Qin Xingbei. How could she be together with His Royal Highness Rui Wang? Yan Yunhua immediately ran to Jinfangzhai to seek confirmation, but unfortunately, the door of Jinfangzhai was always closed. No matter how Yan Yunhua slapped and shouted, the people of Jinfangzhai refused to open the door. Yan Yunhua, who was in a daze, had to go to the Imperial Hospital alone that night to find Lu Muxuan for help. Lu Muxuan naturally agreed to Yan Yunhua's request. The next day, the people of Jinfangzhai summoned Lu Muxuan to see Yan Yuqing. Yan Yunhua dressed up as a manservant and followed him into Jinfangzhai. It was just a few days since they last saw each other, but Yan Yuqing's whole person looked particularly haggard. It turned out that on that day, she was fooling around with Dongfang Li in the bedroom. She had already told Su Wan not to let anyone in, but when the two of them were having sex, Su Wan suddenly rushed in a panic. "Master, His Majesty is here." At that time, Su Wan, who rushed into the bedroom, seemed to be dumbfounded when she saw the scene in front of her, but she still told the bad news that His Majesty was here. At that moment, not to mention Yan Yuqing, even Dongfang Li, who had always been calm in the face of danger, was stunned, and his whole mind went blank. Recently, it was getting easier and easier for him to go to Jinfangzhai, which made him relax his vigilance a long time ago. Who knew that at this time, Dong Fang Yao would suddenly attack them, and he even wanted to catch them in bed. At this critical moment, Su Wan stepped forward bravely. She hurriedly packed Yan Yuqing's clothes and piled them in her arms. "Master, quickly jump out of the side window." It was only a moment of hesitation, but Dong Fangli also reacted. It was a capital crime to fool around with His Majesty's imperial concubine in the harem. But the crime of fooling around with the imperial concubine's palace maid in the harem was much lighter. So, he promptly pushed Yan Yuqing out of the window, and then turned around and held Su Wan in his arms. When Su Rui entered the door with Wang Yi, he saw that Dong Fangli was planning to forcibly kiss Su Wan in his arms, and Su Wan naturally struggled desperately. In short, at that time, His Majesty the Emperor's face darkened. Su Rui almost rushed over with a big stride, and then His Royal Highness Rui Wang was accurately kicked in the lower body by His Majesty's leg sweep. He, who was not wearing much clothes, immediately fell to the ground and howled like a ghost. Seeing that Su Rui was about to go berserk, Su Wan immediately trembled and knelt on the ground and kept shouting, "Your Majesty, spare me! Your Majesty, spare me!" Su Wan's voice finally made Su Rui regain some rationality. He immediately had a gloomy face and coldly said, "Come, take them all away." When Yan Yuqing finally put on her clothes and pretended to come back from outside with a pale face and a nervous heart, she saw Su Rui leading people to take away Dong Fangli and Su Wan, who were still screaming in pain. Chapter 179. With such a big thing happening in Jinfangshui, it was normal for Yan Yuqing's expression to be bad, but when Lu Muxuan checked Yan Yuqing's pulse, his eyes suddenly flashed. Yan Yunhua, who was disguised as a manservant, was also silent at this time. She planned to wait for Lu Muxuan to finish treating Yan Yuqing before asking about Su Wan, but at this time, Lu Muxuan suddenly asked, "May I ask Beauty Yan, did your period come on time this month?" "Period? My period didn't come." Yan Yuqing, who was lying on the bed absent-mindedly, answered subconsciously, but as soon as the words came out, she immediately thought of something. Her eyes widened and she looked at Lu Muxuan in horror. Imperial Physician Lu, Imperial Physician Lu, could it be? At this time, there were only the three of them in the inner room, so Lu Muxuan did not deliberately hide anything. "Your pulse is as smooth as a bead and is particularly strong. Beauty Yan, you are pregnant." How could this be? Hearing Lu Muxuan's words, Yan Yuqing was dumbfounded. The emperor had only touched her once, and when she left that day, Steward Wang had given her contraceptive medicine as usual. Now that so much time had passed, she suddenly had a seed in her belly. No matter how she looked at it, it was impossible for the seed in her stomach to be the emperor's. Imperial Physician Lu, Sister Yunhua. In fact, Yan Yuqing noticed Yan Yunhua as soon as she entered the door, but she wasn't in the mood to talk to Yan Yunhua. But now it was different. Now Yan Yunhua and Lu Muxuan were her life-saving straw. "Sister, help. Imperial Physician Lu, help." Yan Yuqing suddenly struggled to get out of bed and knelt in front of Lu Muxuan and Yan Yunhua, begging bitterly. Yan Yuqing understood Yan Yunhua's character the best. She knew that as long as she cried and begged, Yan Yunhua would immediately soften and agree to her. With her promise, Lu Muxuan would naturally stand on her side. As long as the child was quietly removed, her own life would be saved. Lu Muxuan looked at Yan Yunhua with an awkward expression. The situation in front of him was clear at a glance. It seemed that Yan Yuqing was the one who hung out with Rui Wang in this Jinfangshui, and Su Wan was just her scapegoat. "It's you." At this time, Yan Yunhua's expression was also ugly. She looked in disbelief at Yan Yuqing, who was crying like a pear blossom in front of her. "Yuqing, the person who fooled around with Rui Wang is you. It's you, right?" "Sister, I was possessed, I was confused for a moment." I don't want to die. His Majesty will kill me. Please save me, sister. Yan Yuqing was afraid that Yan Yunhua would not agree to her, so her crying became more and more miserable. In the face of her sister, Yan Yunhua naturally couldn't be heartless and watch her die, but what about Su Wan? She's innocent. Yan Yunhua involuntarily took a step back. She remembered Su Wan's smiling face and everything she had done for her. Su Wan was willing. She was willing. Even she was willing to help me. Sister, are you going to watch me die? Hearing Yan Yunhua mention Su Wan, Yan Yuqing immediately defended herself loudly. Su Wan did it willingly. She was always so kind that people felt ashamed of themselves. Yan Yunhua remembered that when Su Wan entered the Zinzhaku instead of her, she left a long scar on her arm that would follow her for the rest of her life. What about this time? After entering the Imperial Clan court, can she still come out alive? No, I can't. Yan Yunhua took another step back. Seeing that she was still so stubborn, Yan Yuqing's eyes flashed fiercely. She suddenly pulled out the hairpin on the top of her head and pressed it against her throat. Sister, if you and Imperial Physician Lu don't save me, I will die, but Su Wan is different. She's just a palace maid, and His Majesty will only punish her to be tortured. His Majesty also dotes on me very much. As long as my matter is not discovered by His Majesty, I can still go to His Majesty to plead for Su Wan, but if the matter between me and Rui Wang is exposed, sister, think about it. According to His Majesty's cruel character, will there still be survivors in the entire Jinfangsai? At that time, Su Wan will really have a slim chance of survival. It has to be said that Yan Yuqing's verbal cannon skill had already reached the max. At this time, Yan Yunhua's heart began to waver again. I don't know. She was entangled in her heart and shook her head vigorously. I want to see Su Wan. Wait until I see her, then we'll talk about it. With that said, Yan Yunhua suddenly turned around and ran out quickly. It was the first time that Yan Yunhua encountered such a dilemma. At this time, how she wished that she could replace Su Wan. This way, she wouldn't be so embarrassed. Seeing that Yan Yunhua had escaped, Yan Yuqing immediately turned her gaze to Lu Muxuan. Imperial Physician Lu, you are a sensible person. You have to persuade sister not to let her do stupid things. Moreover, she and I are biological sisters. With me in the harem, I can more or less take care of her. If something happens to me, it won't be good if she is implicated. Yan Yunhua's identity was indeed biological sisters with Yan Yuqing. Of course, when this fake Yan Yunhua entered the palace, in order to conceal her identity as an impostor, the two people had always claimed that they were biological sisters. After a long time, Yan Yunhua really regarded Yan Yuqing as her biological sister. Therefore, at this time, Lu Muxuan didn't know that Yan Yunhua and Yan Yuqing had no blood relationship at all. Beauty Yan, I will give you a few prescriptions. You should take good care of your body first. We will slowly solve the rest of the matter. Lu Muxuan calmed Yan Yuqing's emotions and prescribed her a few more prescriptions before slowly leaving Jinfangsai. After Lu Muxuan left, Yan Yuqing wiped the tears on her face and subconsciously stroked her still flat lower abdomen with both hands. Although she really liked Dongfang Li, she couldn't keep this child. She absolutely couldn't keep it. If Lu Muxuan and Yan Yunhua refused to help her, she would have to take the risk and find other imperial physicians for help. It was already winter, and the nights in the imperial city were even colder. After Yan Yunhua came out of Jinfangsai, she wandered around the harem in a daze. Her heart was in a mess now. She didn't want anything to happen to Yan Yuqing, but if she saved Yan Yuqing, then what should Su Wan do? Unknowingly, Yan Yunhua walked to the gate of the Imperial Hospital again. Looking up at the familiar plaque, she couldn't help but sigh. She was really useless. She couldn't do anything right. Lu Mushuan was still treating Yan Yuqing and Jin Fangzhai at this time. What was the use of coming to the Imperial Hospital? Sister Yunuo. At this time, a familiar figure suddenly jumped into Yan Yunuo's line of sight. It was Lu Mushuan's manservant, Fu Lu. Originally, Fu Lu and Lu Mushuan were supposed to make a house call together today, but in order to take Yan Yunuo to Jin Fangzhai, Lu Mushuan lent Fu Lu's clothes to Yan Yunuo. Sister Yunuo, why did you come back alone? Fu Lu looked at the dazed Yan Yunuo and asked with some concern. Yan Yunuo didn't speak and just shook her head absent-mindedly. Seeing her in such a bad state, Fu Lu's expression also changed. Did you not find a way to save Sister Su Wan? What should we do? Little Fu Lu couldn't help but start to walk in circles. I believe that a good person like Sister Su Wan must be innocent. She also told me to do more good deeds. Good people will be rewarded. Speaking of this, Fu Lu's eyes were a little red. He was actually not a bad person, but he was a little greedy. However, the most taboo thing in the Imperial Hospital was greed. Once you made a mistake because of greed, then your whole family could be implicated at any time. Since being educated by Su Wan last time, Fu Lu really slowly got rid of the bad habit of greed. Because of this, he was truly recognized by Lu Mushuan. Now, he had truly learned the pharmacopoeia from Lu Mushuan. So until now, Fu Lu had always remembered Su Wan's words, do more good deeds will be rewarded very deeply. Good people will be rewarded. Yan Yunuo's expression was a little absent-minded. Su Wan had been helping herself to be punished and helping Yan Yuqing suffer. Chapter 180. Bai Mama had been very sad recently ever since Su Wan left the Zinzheku. Although Steward Wang also gave her a large reward, Bai Mama still hadn't received the imperial edict to transfer her out of the Zinzheku. Am I going to die of old age in this courtyard where even birds don't shit on for the rest of my life? The capital in winter was cold, and Bai Mama's heart was colder than the biting northwest wind. Just when Bai Mama had lost confidence, Wang Yi finally arrived late with the latest appointment from His Majesty. An imperial edict allowed Bai Mama to jump from the small steward of the Zinzheku to the left secretary of the imperial clan court in one fell swoop. Although these two places were both places to imprison sinners, the difference was too big, okay? The imperial clan court was directly responsible for the imperial family. In addition to the palace servants who had committed serious crimes in the imperial city, most of the people in the imperial clan court were imperial children who had committed mistakes and were disobedient. These young masters were used to being aloof and had very high requirements in the imperial clan court. However, the imperial clan court was under the direct jurisdiction of His Majesty. The imperial clan court from the imperial clan court to the various secretaries below were directly under the orders of the emperor. They were not afraid of these imperial children, so once they entered the imperial clan court, everyone had to be obedient. If you want to eat and drink well and have privileges, that's fine. It could be said that the imperial clan court was a very profitable place, and the secretaries of the imperial clan court were all fifth-grade officials. Not only did they enjoy the salary of the imperial court, but the people of the imperial clan court were also considered to be completely separated from the imperial city and could apply for their own houses to live outside the palace. When she received the imperial edict, Bai Mama's hands were trembling. Steward Wang has worked hard. After the joy, Bai Mama hurriedly took out a banknote with a large face value from her arms and handed it to Wang Yi, but Wang Yi shook his head and smiled mysteriously at Bai Mama. Mama, it's not as simple as you having good fortune recently. You have to continue to perform well in the imperial clan court. His Majesty is watching. Although she didn't understand Wang Yi's words, Bai Mama still nodded gratefully and sent Wang Yi out of the Zinzheku with a smile on her face. Bai Mama left the Zinzheku, and her position was taken over by her confidant Yu Mei. After arriving at the imperial clan court, Bai Mama immediately changed into the clothes belonging to the left imperial clan. The dark silk was embroidered with the symbol of the Great Shang dynasty's royal family. Bai Mama was wearing this new official robe and her heart felt very beautiful awe. On the first day of her appointment, she immediately took a group of female stewards under her to inspect the women's left prison that she was in charge of. Then, Bai Mama's entire person was like a fortress. Bai Mama, what a coincidence. I can meet you here too. In the clean and tidy prison, Su Wan was sitting in front of a low table practicing calligraphy. She heard Bai Mama's loud voice from afar. When she brought people closer, Su Wan couldn't help but greet her. Right, look at my memory, you are now a member of Bai Zongshi Ah. At this time, Bai Mama's heart was very complicated. She instantly thought of Steward Wang's meaningful words when passing the decree. As the saying goes, it's better to do something familiar than to do it raw. No wonder His Majesty directly transferred her to the imperial clan court. It was to continue to serve this and ah. Good, this at least shows that I served her well last time, right? Bai Mama only froze for a moment and immediately directed her subordinates to open the door of Su Wan's cell. Then she waved everyone away and approached Su Wan with a smile on her face. Miss Su, you can call me Bai Pei. This is this old slave's lowly name. What imperial clan? This old slave doesn't dare to be arrogant in front of Mississippi. Bai Pei didn't want to care about why Su Wan always stayed in such a strange place. She only knew that as long as she served this aunt well, she could be promoted all the way. After listening to Bai Pei's words, Su Wan just nodded lightly. I can rest assured with you here. If anyone comes to see me in the next few days, men are not allowed to enter, and women are allowed to enter. Men are not allowed to enter. Bai Pei's face changed slightly, then His Majesty. I mean, what about that lord? Him. Su Wan smiled. You don't have to worry about this. Whether it was the Zinzheku or the imperial clan court, there was no place that could stop Su Wan. Oh, this old slave understands, I understand. Bai Pei nodded. She bent down and glanced around the prison where Su Wan was now. Sure enough, a lot of daily necessities were available. Could it be that His Majesty still comes here every night? Thinking of the last time she accidentally bumped into His Majesty, Bai Pei shuddered all over. She secretly warned herself in her heart that she must never casually come to Miss Su's place after nightfall. The days in the imperial clan court were actually much more comfortable than in the Zinzheku. Although she was locked up in a narrow place this time, Su Wan could really relax and rest comfortably on the big bed here. Dong Fangli, who was also imprisoned in the right minister of the imperial clan court, was not so lucky. Although he failed to kiss her that day, he used his hands to hug Su Wan, so on the first night he entered the imperial clan court, the tendons of Dong Fangli's hands were abruptly cut off by Su Rui. At that time, Dong Fangli, who almost fainted from the pain, kept shouting that he wanted to ask the royal families Zongjing and Zongling to uphold justice for him. At that time, Dong Fangli didn't know that before Su Wan came to this cell, he had already dealt with the Zongling and the others of the imperial clan court. In the face of absolute power and strength, everything was fleeting. With the arrival of the first heavy snow of winter, the entire imperial city was covered with snow, and everywhere was a vast expanse of whiteness. Yan Yunhua finally spent money to find someone to get through to the imperial clan court and had the opportunity to see Su Wan. This time, Su Wan didn't need to perform too ostentatiously. She just told Bai Pei to change her cell to an ordinary one in advance. The sun couldn't be seen in the cell, only the dim yellow candlelight kept swaying. When Yan Yunhua saw Su Wan, she was sitting in front of the low table in the cell, writing something with a tranquil expression. Xiao Wan. Sister Yunhua, you're here. Seeing Yan Yunhua, Su Wan smiled at her indifferently. Seeing her smile and the ferocious scar on her arm that was faintly discernible under the white prison uniform, Yan Yunhua couldn't bear to turn her face away. Xiao Wan, I know about that matter. I know you are innocent, Yuqing, she. Su Wan shook her head at Yan Yunhua, indicating that the walls have ears. Sister Yunhua, I know what you want to say. One should take responsibility for one's own actions. Beauty Yen has always been kind to me, I can't implicate her. As she said this, Su Wan gently wrote 8 big words on the rice paper on the low table. Know how to repay kindness, kindness will be rewarded. Seeing that Su Wan was so open-minded, Yan Yunhua subconsciously bit her lip. Although Yan Yunhua asked herself if she could do this for her sister, now that she was standing from the perspective of a bystander, she had been feeling distressed for Su Wan. She knew that Su Wan was living so comfortably now because the Imperial Clan Court had not yet interrogated her case. Once the interrogation started, there would definitely be torture. At that time, it would definitely be a bloody scene. When Yan Yunhua went to the Imperial Clan Court to visit Su Wan, Chen Xingbei, who was staying in the guard camp, stayed alone in the room and drowned his sorrows with alcohol. Su Bingyue told him about Su Wan, but until now, Chen Xingbei still didn't believe that Su Wan really had anything to do with Rui Wang. Who was Rui Wang? If he wanted a little palace maid, he only needed to ask His Majesty and His Majesty would definitely give him the person he fancied. Su Wan must have been framed and wronged. Chen Xingbei firmly believed in this. He had to find a way to save Su Wan. Yes, he must save her. Chapter 181. Chen Xingbei's trip to the Imperial Clan Court was naturally not as smooth as Yan Yunhua's. Bai Pei had long been instructed by Su Wan to not let any man in. Chen Xingbei, who was turned away, could only stand outside the Imperial Clan Court with a faint gaze, looking at the high-walled courtyard in front of him. Su Wan, why don't you see me? He left the Imperial Clan Court in a daze. When Chen Xingbei returned to the guard camp, he saw that Su Bingyue had been waiting in his room for a long time. Big brother Chen, you went out. Seeing Chen Xingbei's bad expression, Su Bingyue couldn't help but ask with concern. I went to the Imperial Clan Court. Chen Xingbei answered absent-mindedly. Hearing his words, Su Bingyue immediately looked nervous. Big brother Chen, then, did you see Sister Su Wan? Chen Xingbei shook his head and turned to sit on a wooden chair at the side. She refused to see me. Bingyue, do you think she doesn't believe me? In fact, I have always believed that she is innocent. Big brother Chen. Hearing Chen Xingbei's words, Su Bingyue's eyes flashed slightly and her face also showed a very anxious look. Big brother Chen, maybe you misunderstood Sister Su Wan. After this happened, she might not want to implicate you. Yes. Hearing Su Bingyue's words, Chen Xingbei's eyes lit up. Bingyue, you're right. Xiao Wan definitely doesn't want to implicate me. She is really too kind. Now that she refuses to see me, how can I express my feelings? Frowning and hesitating for a moment, Chen Xingbei suddenly raised his head and looked at Su Bingyue in front of him with bright eyes. Bingyue, help me go to the Imperial Clan Court to see Su Wan. If it's you, she will definitely see you. At that time, you can convey my intentions to her, let her believe me and let her see me, how about it? This. Hearing Chen Xingbei's request, Su Bingyue's little face showed a hint of hesitation. Big brother Chen, you don't know, but Sister Xiao Wan's temper is very stubborn. It's difficult to change what she has decided. I'm afraid that if I go over and tell her empty words, she won't believe me, unless... Su Bingyue's gaze fell on Chen Xingbei's waist. There was also a jade pendant hanging next to the sword he was wearing. That was the token of his engagement with Su Wan. Elder brother Chen, give me the keepsake between you two. I'll show it to Sister Su Wan. With the jade pendant as proof, she should believe your sincerity. At this time, Su Bingyue's words were serious and her face was sincere. Hearing her words, Chen Xingbei naturally had no doubt. He only hesitated for a moment before he had a plan in his heart. Then I'll have to trouble you, Bingyue. As he spoke, Chen Xingbei took off the jade pendant on his waist and solemnly handed it to Su Bingyue. With the jade pendant in her hands, Su Bingyue's heart was excited and nervous, but her face still displayed a very serious expression. Elder brother Qin, don't worry. I will definitely give this jade pendant to Sister Su Wan. Su Bingyue clenched the jade pendant in her hand tightly. A ruthless glint flashed across her eyes. How could a sinner like Su Wan be worthy of Shen family's jade pendant? This jade pendant would be his. It would be his sooner or later. The next day, in the imperial clan court, Su Bingyue asked for leave from Liao Si early in the morning and took the token to leave the imperial harem and came to the imperial clan court. At this time, Su Wan had just woken up. The days here were really comfortable and the cell had always been day and night. Last night, she was idle and bored, so she played chess with Su Rui in the cell. As a result, she forgot the time. If it weren't for Wang Yi's reminder, the two of them would probably have played until morning. After Su Rui went to the morning court, Su Wan didn't eat breakfast on time. Instead, she comfortably took a nap. So when Su Bingyue came in, she saw that Su Wan was sleepy and listless. Sister Su Wan. Su Bingyue handed some broken silver to the female supervisor who was in charge of Su Wan. The person immediately opened the cell door for her. Seeing that there were no scars on Su Wan's body, Su Bingyue's gaze converged. When she raised her eyes again, her eyes were already watery. Sister, you've suffered these days. These tears came really quickly. Seeing that Su Bingyue's acting was so exquisite, Su Wan had to cooperate with her and revealed a reluctant smile. The case hasn't been tried yet. I'm still living comfortably now. Then in the future. Sister Su Wan, what if you are really convicted? A palace mate having an affair with someone was a capital crime. And the object of the affair this time was Rui Wangye. In fact, Su Bingyue didn't believe that Su Wan and Rui Wangye were having an affair. If it was Yan Yuqing, that restless person, she would still believe it. However, what did it matter? It didn't matter whether she believed it or not. The main thing was that His Majesty believed it, and more importantly, she wanted Chen Xingbei to believe it. If I really can't escape the death penalty, I will also accept it. Su Wan sighed, it's just that I have to let you worry about me. I feel very sorry. Sister Su Wan, what are you saying? We are sisters, so we naturally have to share weal and woe. And brother Qin. Speaking of Chen Xingbei, Su Bingyue's eyes flickered a few times. Sister, why don't you see brother Qin? Both of us really want to help you and save you. If you don't see him, these 2 days, he has been very worried. Su Bingyue deliberately used the words, both of us, in order to attract Su Wan's attention. Sure enough, when Su Wan heard Su Bingyue's words, she seemed to hesitate for a moment and there was some suspicion on her face. At this time, Su Bingyue deliberately took a few steps forward and lifted her palace skirt. Come sister, your body is weak. Let me support you. The moment she moved, the jade pendant on her waist was immediately revealed. Seeing the jade pendant that Su Bingyue carried with her, Su Wan froze. Her face was pale as she slowly raised her hand and her fingers gently touched the jade pendant on Su Bingyue's waist. Bingyue, this jade pendant is, this jade pendant. Su Bingyue suddenly let go of Su Wan's hands, her pretty face full of panic. Sister Su Wan, this jade pendant was not given to me by brother Qin. I bought it myself. Didn't I think that piece of yours was very nice? So don't lie to me. Su Wan's expression was somewhat complicated. There is a small Shin character engraved at the bottom of this jade pendant. This is the song She of the Shin family. I won't mistake it. Seeing Su Wan's certainty, Su Bingyue immediately knelt down. Sister Su Wan, I didn't do you wrong, but Xingbei and we really love each other. I actually always wanted to tell you about this, but I was afraid that you couldn't take the blow. Now that something like this happened to you, Xingbei and I couldn't bear to tell you about this. Sister Su Wan, everything is my fault. I couldn't help myself. Don't blame brother Xingbei. He didn't lie to you on purpose. Don't blame him. If you want to hate someone, hate me. If you want to blame someone, blame me. As she spoke, Su Bingyue raised her head with tears on her face and her hands tightly grabbed Su Wan's white prison uniform. Sister, if you want to hit or scold me, Bingyue will never complain. Su Wan's expression was ugly as she took a few steps back, her whole body trembling slightly. Seeing that she didn't speak, Su Bingyue had to cry even harder. Forget it. Su Wan gently brushed away Su Bingyue's hands that were grabbing her clothes. This may be fate. When I'm gone, you will take care of him. I can rest assured. Sister Su Wan. When Su Bingyue heard Su Wan's words, she immediately stood up and grabbed her arm excitedly. You're willing to forgive us. Feelings can't be forced. Since you really love each other, the engagement between me and him doesn't count. As she spoke, Su Wan turned back to her bedside and took out her jade pendant. Return this to him. It's considered returning it to its rightful owner. Thank you, thank you. Su Bingyue held the jade pendant that Su Wan handed over. This time, her heart was truly at ease. This time, Su Wan completely cut off her feelings for Qin Xingbei. Then no matter how Qin Xingbei begged for mercy, Su Wan wouldn't see him again. And with this jade pendant, she would have an excuse in front of Qin Xingbei when she went back. Su Bingyue, who had achieved her goal, said a few perfunctory words to Su Wan and then hurriedly turned and left. Looking at her departing back, Su Wan could imagine that her face must be full of pride at this time. Su Bingyue, I'll let you be proud for the time being. Chapter 182. Imperial City, Shangfu Bureau. Because Su Bingyue asked for a leave of absence, Yan Yunhua was particularly busy this morning. She was finally able to take a break at noon, but Qin Ji appeared out of nowhere and pulled Yan Yunhua out of the hall. Qin Gongong, what happened? Yan Yunhua was baffled by Qin Ji's actions. She passively followed him along the way and asked in confusion. How would Zejia know? Qin Ji rolled his eyes, but his feet didn't stop. He brought Yan Yunhua outside the Shangfu Bureau in one go. At this time, Bai Pei was standing there with an anxious face. Bai Si sure. When Yan Yunhua saw Bai Pei's face, her face also became nervous. Bai Si sure, why are you here? Did something happen to Su Wan? AI. Hearing Yan Yunhua's question, Bai Pei sighed and took out a letter from her arms. This is what Miss Su left for you. Read it yourself. Su Wan's letter. Yan Yunhua took the letter and quickly opened it to read. The content of the letter was very simple. It was to let Yan Yunhua live well and let Su Bingyue and Qin Xingbei be well. The whole letter looked more like a suicide note. Bai Si sure, quickly take me to see Su Wan. I'm afraid something will happen to her. Before she finished reading the letter, Yan Yunhua's face changed drastically. She grabbed Bai Pei's hand tightly and ran out. AI, don't worry. Miss Su is fine now. Bai Pei grabbed Yan Yunhua's hand. Just now, Su Wan hanged herself in the Imperial Clan Court, but she has been rescued. I found this letter on her table, so I immediately sent it to you. What? Hearing that Su Wan actually committed suicide, Yen Yunhua and Qin Ji were shocked. How could this be? Why is that girl so stubborn? Qin Ji flicked his horsetail whisk and sighed. Is there any hurdle in this world that can't be overcome? Hasn't His Majesty convicted her yet? What is she afraid of? This is not Rui Wang's matter. At this point, Bai Pei looked embarrassed. I passed by Miss Sue's cell this morning and accidentally overheard her conversation with someone else. That girl said that she and Miss Sue's fiancé were truly in love and wanted Miss Sue to fulfill their wishes. Sigh, this matter is too unreasonable. Say, Miss Sue is already in such a miserable state, and there are still people who add insult to injury at this time. It's natural for her to take things too hard. Tisk tsk tsk. Hearing Bai Pei's words, Qin Ji narrowed his eyes. There are too many bitches in this world. Could it be? No, no. Yen Yunhua listened to Bai Pei's words and carefully looked at the suicide note that Su Wan left for herself. Her face changed again and again. The person who stole Su Wan's fiancé, could it be? Su Bingyue. Bai Si sure, do you know the name of the girl who went to see Su Wan? Yen Yunhua suddenly grabbed Bai Pei's hand and asked nervously. What's it called? Bai Pei frowned. Our residence has records of it. It seems to be called something like Bing. Oh, what month? Su Bingyue. Yen Yunhua trembled as she said the name. Hearing her words, Bai Pei's eyes lit up and she fiercely clapped her hands. Yes, 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 it's called Su Bingyue. Su Bingyue. Just now, Zejia saw her walking to the guard camp with a face full of success. Humph, that dead girl, Zejia has long seen that she is not a good person. When it came to Su Bingyue, Qin Ji did not hide his dislike for her. Hearing his words, Yen Yunhua immediately grabbed Qin Ji's sleeve anxiously. Qin Gonggong, help me. Take me to the guard camp. I want to find Qin Xingbei and Su Bingyue and ask them clearly. Qin Ji was a little embarrassed, but seeing Yen Yunhua's anxious appearance and noticing that Bai Pei had been giving him a meaningful look, Qin Ji's mind flashed. Okay. Zejia also wants to see with his own eyes how ruthless this adulterous couple is. Go. Zejia will take you there. I'll go and see too. Without waiting for the two people to invite her, Bai Pei also took the initiative to follow behind the two people. This was the task that Su Wan had given her. She had to see the whole process with her eyes and remember it in her heart, and then go back to report it to that great aunt that there were not many people in the guard camp at noon. Most people had gone to eat after changing shifts at this time. Today, Qin Xingbei and Su Bingyue made an appointment in front of a courtyard next to the guard camp's training ground. Qin Ji took Yen Yunhua and Bai Pei around the guard camp and finally found Qin Xingbei under the guidance of others. At this time, Qin Xingbei and Su Bingyue were talking. Qin Xingbei's emotions were slightly agitated and his voice was very loud. His voice could be heard from a long distance. I don't believe it, Xiao Wan wouldn't do this to me. She must have said this on purpose, just to make me give up. Qin Xingbei was agitated and his voice trembled. I want to see her in person. If she doesn't see me, I will wait for her outside the Imperial Clan Court. Big brother Qin, why don't you understand? Su Bingyue took out the jade pendant that Su Wan had returned to Qin Xingbei. She has already returned the jade pendant to you. She really won't see you again. She has been in Jinfangshai for so long and is used to seeing her master's luxurious clothes and food. She wants to be a princess and wants to be a master. This kind of mood is understandable. Big brother Qin, give up. Even if you really see her, what can you do? Before I went to see her today, I didn't believe that the matter between her and Rui Wang was true. I thought that she had her own difficulties for not seeing you. I always felt that she was very kind and didn't want to implicate you, but It turns out that it's not like that. Su Bingyue's eyes were also red at this time. She raised her hand and gently grabbed Qin Xingbei's sleeve. Big brother Qin, forget about her. Aren't there many good girls in this world? Why are you so sad for someone who doesn't love you anymore? No, it's not like that, it won't be. If Su Wan hadn't personally told him, Qin Xingbei always felt that he wouldn't give up. He wouldn't believe it and he wouldn't be willing to believe all of this. The three people not far away heard the conversation between the two people. Bai Pei couldn't help but whisper, "This is really Miss Su's good sister. She says one thing to someone's face and another behind their back." Humph. Chen Ji coldly snorted twice. There are many double-faced treacherous people like this in the palace. She can only blame Su Wan for being too stupid. She is willing to believe anyone. She wants to be a good person. What do you mean by good people don't live long and scourges live for thousands of years? All the good people in the palace are going to die. Speaking up to here, Chen Ji couldn't help but touch Yan Yunhua, who had a sluggish expression. "Yunhua, you and Su Bingyue are usually the closest. You have to see her face clearly. Su Wan is a lesson for you. Don't stupidly learn from Su Wan and block bullets for others all day long. She's stupid. Stupid to death. Stupid. Yes, Su Wan is a fool. She is willing to admit any crime for her sister, and in the end, she is even willing to give up her beloved person. However, is it worth it for a person like Su Bingyue? As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly. As a bystander with a conscience and a sense of justice, Yan Yunhua really couldn't stand it anymore. Su Bingyue. She rushed out and ran directly in front of Su Bingyue and Qin Xingbei. She raised her hand and slapped Su Bingyue in the face. This slap is for Su Wan. Yan Yunhua had never fought with others since she was a child, let alone slapping others in the face. This time, she was really angry and impulsive. After slapping Su Bingyue, Yan Yunhua finally vented a lot of the anger in her heart. Chapter 183. Yan Yunhua. Su Bingyue was dizzy from the sudden slap. She covered her red face and a cold light flashed in her eyes. "Sister Yunhua, what are you doing? What do you mean by hitting for Sister Su Wan?" Seeing Su Bingyue's innocent look, Yan Yunhua couldn't help but look up at Qin Xingbei, who was standing on the side with a dark expression. "You are Qin Xingbei, right?" Hearing Yan Yunhua's question, Qin Xingbei nodded. Originally, when Yan Yunhua rushed over to hit Su Bingyue, Qin Xingbei had time to stop her, but when he heard her mention Su Wan's name, Qin Xingbei instinctively froze for a moment and did not immediately make a move. Su Bingyue. Seeing that Qin Xingbei admitted his identity, Yan Yunhua turned to look at Su Bingyue again. "Brother Qin is Su Wan's fiancé. You are pulling and pulling with him, are you worthy of Su Wan? I and Brother Qin are open and above board, what am I afraid of? If Sister Yunhua feels that it's inappropriate, you can go and tell Sister Su Wan. She doesn't want Brother Qin anymore, so why can't I be with Brother Qin?" Su Bingyue's answer could be described as ambiguous, in order to confuse Yan Yunhua's sight and hearing. Hee. Hearing her words, Yan Yunhua finally smiled. She just asked this deliberately, but she didn't expect Su Bingyue to really dare to answer. "Who told you that Su Wan doesn't want Qin Xingbei?" Yan Yunhua took out Su Wan's letter from her arms. "Just after you went to see her, Su Wan committed suicide in the Imperial Clan Court. This is her suicide note. Su Bingyue, do you dare to tell Qin Xingbei what you said to Su Wan in the Imperial Clan Court?" "What?" Hearing that Su Wan actually committed suicide, Su Bingyue was also very surprised, and Qin Xingbei, who was on the side, suddenly stepped forward and tightly pressed Yan Yunhua's shoulder. "Is what you said true?" "Su Wan. How is Xiao Wan? Can she be saved? So you still know how to care about her. Yan Yunhua turned and looked at Qin Xingbei, who was obviously kept in the dark. Su Binghua told Su Wan that you and her truly love each other. Su Wan walked on the road of no return in order to fulfill your wishes. Ice Moon. Hearing Yan Yunhua's words, Qin Xingbei's gaze fell coldly on Su Binghua's face like a knife. Is what she said true? Did you really tell Su Wan that? Su Binghua was a little flustered for a while. She didn't know how much Yan Yunhua knew, and she didn't know what was written in Su Wan's suicide note. It was definitely a very difficult task to think of another statement in such a short period of time without making people suspicious. When Qin Xingbei saw Su Binghua's reaction, he already had an idea in his heart. No wonder she kept persuading him not to confront Su Wan. It was no wonder that every time she came to deliver a letter to him, she would purposely delay the time to chat with him. Qin Xingbei linked everything together and soon understood Su Binghua's selfishness. Sure enough, in the inner courtyard of the palace, how could there be so much sisterly love? You are so vicious. Qin Xingbei looked at Su Binghua fiercely. In addition to hatred, there was also deep disgust in his eyes. Qin Xingbei had always been a particularly upright person. He usually hated those who were greedy for vanity and stirred up trouble. Now that he had seen Su Binghua's true face, Qin Xingbei naturally wouldn't have any good expression towards her, let alone the slightest bit of pity. Turning around, Qin Xingbei looked at Yan Yunhua, who also had a pained expression. Miss Yan, thank you for telling me the truth. How is Su Wan? Su Wan has been rescued. Her life is not in danger, but she is still unconscious. Regarding Su Wan's current situation, it was naturally Bai Pei who told Yan Yunhua, and Bai Pei also kindly reminded Yan Yunhua that such a thing happened in the Imperial Clan Court must be reported to His Majesty for a decision, so now the Imperial Clan Court had declined visits. If they wanted to visit Su Wan, they would have to wait for His Majesty to deal with this matter. Because of Yan Yunhua's timely appearance, the tragedy of Qin Xingbei being deceived by Su Binghua was avoided. The end of the matter was naturally that Qin Xingbei and Yan Yunhua left one after the other, leaving Su Binghua standing alone in the same place, staring at Yan Yunhua's departing figure with a face full of resentment. Yan Yunhua, you meddlesome idiot. I won't forgive you. If you don't let me live well, I won't let you live well either. Since Big Brother Qin already dislikes me, then why can you be a couple with Imperial Physician Liu? Su Binghua had always been such a person. Once she encountered something, it would only be the fault of others. She never looked for reasons on herself. She only knew that if she wasn't doing well, she would make everyone suffer. Yan Yunhua, just you wait. With a strong sense of hatred for Yan Yunhua in her heart, Su Binghua slowly turned around and did not return to the Shangfu Bureau. Instead, she slowly walked towards another place in the harem alone. Late at night. On a cold winter night, Lu Muxuan didn't carry a lantern. He followed the route in his memory and stumbled to an empty side hall in the harem. There was no one around and the night wind whimpered. Lu Muxuan tightened the cotton robe on his body and looked around. Not long after, a small figure came into his eyes. The figure hurried in the night and he could only see a vague outline from a distance. When he walked closer, he found that the person was covered in a thick black hooded cloak. Yunhua. Lu Muxuan called out in a low voice. The figure heard his voice and involuntarily quickened his pace, following the voice and directly came to Lu Muxuan. Yunhua, you. Lu Muxuan just wanted to ask Yan Yunhua why she asked him to come to this place, but the person in front of him suddenly lifted the hood, revealing Yan Yuqing's face under the hood. Beauty Yan. Lu Muxuan took a step back slightly and looked at Yan Yuqing in surprise. Why are you? It was my sister who asked me to come. Yan Yuqing also looked at Lu Muxuan inexplicably at this time. Why are you alone, Imperial Physician Lu? Where is my sister? Oh no. Lu Muxuan's face suddenly changed when he heard Yan Yuqing's words. Yan Yuqing also thought of something at this time, but it was too late. The soaring flames illuminated the dark sky and a large group of servants holding torches surrounded the two people under the leadership of Wang Yi. The person standing next to Wang Yi at this time was impressively Su Bingyue. Yan Yuqing was also a very cautious person on weekdays, but this time she still fell for Su Bingyue's trick. It was all because Su Bingyue knew them too well. She imitated Yan Yunua's handwriting and made an appointment with Lu Muxuan. Later, she left a letter for Yan Yuqing, asking her to come here alone at night to discuss Su Wan's matter. Yan Yuqing was currently at a loss. Seeing that Yan Yunua was finally willing to take the initiative to make an appointment with her, she thought that Yan Yunua had thought things through and was willing to help her, so Yan Yuqing didn't doubt her and fell into Su Bingyue's trap unsuspectingly. So, sometimes the person who hurts you the most is not necessarily your enemy, but also your friend. Chapter 184. Yan Yunua only learned about the arrest of Lu Muxuan and Yan Yuqing the next morning. At the same time, the Shangfu Bureau also began to circulate that Su Bingyue had been noticed by His Majesty because of her meritorious reporting and was transferred to the palace to be the Imperial Maid of Honor. The Imperial Maid of Honor was the personal palace maid of His Majesty. She was the highest-ranking female official in the harem. From the little palace maid of the Shangfu Bureau to the personal palace maid of His Majesty, this was simply reaching the sky in one step. Before Su Bingyue left, those people in the Shangfu Bureau who had money and power all surrounded her with a smile on their faces, fawning and flattering her. Su Bingyue had always been smiling in the face of everyone's fawning. When she took her entourage out of the gate of the Shangfu Bureau arrogantly, she saw Yan Yunua, who had just come back from the Imperial Hospital to inquire about the news. The two people could be said to be enemies on a narrow road. Su Bingyue. You are simply too much. You framed Imperial Physician Lu and Yuqing, it must be you. I'm going to take you to His Majesty to argue. At this time, Yan Yunua had already seen Su Bingyue's true face. Seeing her proud look, she couldn't help but rush up excitedly, but before she reached Su Bingyue, she was stopped by the two low-ranking palace maids behind Su Bingyue. Bold slave, you dare to speak rudely to head maid Su. Do you know your crime? Yes, Su Bingyue was now head maid Su, and her status was half a level higher than Liao Si. This was the so-called rising to the sky overnight and rising to the clouds. Yan Yunua was stopped by the two palace maids, and her hands were clamped. Looking at her anxious and helpless face, Su Bingyue smiled comfortably. Yan Yunua, you want to hit me again? Humph, you want to hit me? Someone, slap her mouth for me. Paw paw. Paw paw. The loud slapping sounds lingered in the ears. Following the movements of the palace maids, both sides of Yan Yunua's face were slapped red and swollen, and the corners of her mouth gradually oozed bright red blood. Okay. Su Bingyue made a gesture and walked to Yan Yunua step by step. She raised her hand with a chuckle and pinched Yan Yunua's chin with her slender fingers. Yan Yunua, are you worthy of fighting me? You let elder brother Shen dislike me, so I will let your Imperial Physician Lu die without a burial ground. As she spoke, Su Bingyue couldn't help but gently lean over and whisper in Yan Yunua's ear, by the way, I forgot to tell you. His Royal Highness Rui Wang is said to have been released from the Imperial Clan Court by His Majesty. I also heard that Rui Wang's injury this time is very serious. I'm afraid that he has no hope of having children in this life. Do you think he will still care about Su Wan's life and death after he comes out? Rui Wang had come out. And he would never have any children in this life. Hearing Su Bingyue's words, Yan Yunua's mind suddenly remembered the child in Yan Yuqing's belly. That is Rui Wang's child. If she went to beg His Highness Rui Wang, would Rui Wang help? For a moment, this absurd idea suddenly emerged in Yan Yunua's mind and could no longer be extinguished. She was going to beg Rui Wang, and Rui Wang would definitely save them for Yuqing's sake. That it has to be said that Yan Yunua still imagined the people in the world to be too kind at this time. When she came to Rui Wang's mansion to see Rui Wang and personally told Dong Fangli about Yan Yuqing and Lu Muxuan, Dong Fangli happily promised Yan Yunua that he would try his best to save the two people. But a few days later, the news of Yan Yuqing's sudden death suddenly came from the imperial clan court, and along with this news, there was a blood letter written by Yan Yuqing herself. In the blood letter, she admitted that she had an affair with imperial physician Lu and admitted that she was ashamed of His Majesty and that she deserved to die. Yan Yuqing is dead. As Yan Yuqing's sister, Yan Yunua rushed to the imperial clan court alone to collect the corpse, but what she got was an unrecognizable corpse. The corpse was not Yan Yuqing. After all, Yan Yunua was a person who was very familiar with Yan Yuqing. At this time, even if she was stupid, she understood something. Yan Yuqing faked her death, and everything was naturally manipulated by His Highness Rui Wang. She had confessed, before dying, in order to confirm Lu Muxuan's crime and make him unable to turn over the day. After all, Lu Muxuan was an insider. If he was forced to a dead end and exposed the relationship between Rui Wang and Yan Yuqing to the emperor, then Rui Wang would definitely be implicated. Now, Yan Yuqing was the one who complained first, and then there was a dead man tells no tales. Even if Lu Muxuan had a mouth all over his body, he wouldn't be able to explain himself. And even if Yan Yunua reacted now and ran to the emperor to tell the truth, His Majesty would never believe her. This move of pulling the firewood from the bottom of the cauldron was really too extreme. She thought of Lu Muxuan, who was forced into a desperate situation, and then thought of Su Wan, who was also locked up in the imperial clan court and couldn't defend herself. Yan Yunua only felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Why, good people don't have good rewards. What had they done wrong that they had to suffer such injustice? At this moment, without the help of Qin Xingbei in the original plot, she also lost the protection of Lu Muxuan, and even less the favor of the infatuated Emperor Dongfang Yao. In this world, Yan Yunua, who was now alone, finally fully realized the darkness and ruthlessness of this harem. After Su Bingwe came to power, she began to use the power in her hands to constantly eradicate dissidents. She first framed Liao Si of the Shangfu Bureau, then eradicated all the people in the Shangfu Bureau who were on good terms with Yan Yunua, and then replaced them with her own trusted subordinates. As a result, Yan Yunua's life in the Shangfu Bureau could be described as difficult. Her lover was framed, and the only good sister who treated her sincerely was also trapped in prison. She, who had always been unyielding, was also unable to move an inch in the harem and was restrained everywhere. Yan Yunua's indomitable heart, which was bent on doing good, finally began to collapse gradually in this cruel reality. Why? Why is God so unfair? In the dark night, she stood on the deserted imperial road and shouted powerlessly. Tomorrow was the day of Lu Muxuan and Su Wan's execution, but Yan Yunua couldn't do anything. She could only watch helplessly as the people who treated her the best and loved her in this world left her. Sometimes, to let a person see reality clearly, it was not necessary to let her feel the same way. Let her, as a person in the game, watch the people around her be framed one by one and leave one by one. Not only was she powerless, but she would also make things worse and worse. This was the cruelest punishment. At this moment, Yan Yunua was full of despair towards this world and herself. You want to know why? A cold voice suddenly came from behind Yan Yunua. Yan Yunua turned around in panic and saw Wang Yi standing behind her with a bright palace lantern. The man standing elegantly in front of Wang Yi was the current emperor, Dongfang Yao. Your Majesty. Yan Yunua immediately knelt on the ground and said anxiously, Your Majesty is wise. Imperial physician Lu and Su Wan were both wrongly accused. Your Majesty, please investigate clearly. Yan Yunhua didn't have many chances to see the Emperor. She knew that this was her last chance. Jin knows that they were wrongly accused. Su Rui lowered his eyes and coldly looked at Yan Yunhua on the ground. In this harem, there is no need for unnecessary kindness. That kindness is just ignorance and stupidity. Seeing Yan Yunhua's shocked expression, Su Rui sneered and then slowly said, Su Wan knew that Beauty Yan made a mistake, but she insisted on bearing it for her, so she should accept the punishment she snatched. As for you and Lu Mushuan, you both knew that Beauty Yan had an evil spawn. This was a good opportunity for you to rescue Su Wan and make a great contribution, but you both gave up. Why? Ridiculous sisterhood. Yan Yunhua, have you forgotten that you are not Yan Yuqing's sister at all? She has never regarded you as her sister. You missed the best opportunity to rescue Su Wan for someone who has never regarded you as a sister, and you also made Lu Mushuan unable to explain himself. Such a kind person, do you feel disgusted now? Disgusted? You should hate yourself as much as you want. Because of your own mistakes, you let others suffer innocently. Hearing Su Rui's words, Yan Yunhua knelt there in a daze. Ignorant kindness, is it stupidity? While Yan Yunhua was in a daze, Su Rui suddenly waved his hand. Wang Yi immediately understood and took out a stack of letters from his arms. He gently threw them on the bluestone ground in front of Yan Yunhua. This is the correspondence between Yan Yuqing and Su Bingyue. Now, these two people are thinking about how to kill you every day. If you continue to be a kind fool, then Jin will fulfill your wish and let you die together with Lu Mushuan and Su Wan. In the end, Su Rui's tone was already frighteningly cold. This is. Yan Yunhua looked at the scattered letters on the ground. She recognized Yan Yuqing's notes. Seeing Su Bingyue and Yan Yuqing constantly planning how to kill her in the letters, Yan Yuqing's gaze gradually changed. How can I die? She can't die, but not because she is afraid of death. She hasn't rescued Lu Mushuan and Su Wan yet. She can't die, she must not die. Your Majesty, please give this slave some pointers. In fact, Yan Yunhua was just too kind, she was not really stupid. She had long heard that His Majesty still had other implications, so at this moment, Yan Yunhua would say such words. She knew that His Majesty said this to her, not just to laugh at how stupid she was. Zhen can suspend Lu Mushuan and Su Wan's sentence. Seeing that Yan Yunhua finally understood, Su Rui couldn't help but smile. You don't have to stay in the Shangfu Bureau. From tomorrow onwards, you will serve concubine Liang. She doesn't have much time left. If you do things well for her, she will help you fulfill all your wishes. An imperial attendant was not concubine Liang's opponent at all, and following concubine Liang, Su Rui felt that Yan Yunhua would definitely be taught by concubine Liang to be much smarter than she is now. This slave obeys. Hearing Su Rui's words, Yan Yunhua immediately kowtowed and thanked him. When she raised her head again, she saw the shadows of His Majesty and Steward Wang. If the harem was destined to be a place where people eat people, then she couldn't just sit still and wait to be eaten by others. She absolutely couldn't. Yan Yunhua's gaze gradually became firm, and her state of mind finally underwent a qualitative change in this cold night. Some people will burst out with unlimited potential when they are forced to a dead end. And some people, only when the person they care about is in a desperate situation. For that person, they can stimulate the power hidden in their body. Yan Yunhua was such a person. Boundless despair made her strong. Winter passed and spring came. Ever since Yan Yunhua entered Xuning Palace, she was quickly put in an important position by concubine Liang. At this time, although concubine Liang's body gradually improved, the chronic poison in her body could never be removed, which led to her lifespan becoming little. Feeling that she would die soon, concubine Liang taught Yan Yunhua more seriously. She wanted to teach such a woman who didn't even dare to kill a chicken into a cold-blooded woman who would kill without blinking an eye. This process was indeed very difficult, but it would make concubine Liang feel a sense of accomplishment. She was going to die, but she wanted to personally teach a scourge to replace her in stirring up trouble in this harem. At this time, Yan Yunhua had experienced so many things and was no longer as simple as before. She would do whatever concubine Liang taught her. She vowed in her heart that she must rescue Su Wan and Lu Mushuan. For the rest of their lives, she will protect them. When another autumn arrived, Su Wan, who was still locked in the imperial clan court, suddenly received the news that the mission was completed. This surprised Su Wan for a while. She always felt that it would take at least more than a year for Yan Yunhua's entire body to complete the transformation. She didn't expect it to be completed so quickly. This day, for most people in the imperial city, was an ordinary and busy day, but for Yan Yunhua, this was a very meaningful day. In the punishment hall of the palace, the blood all over the ground exuded a pungent smell. Su Bingyue fell in a pool of blood, her body covered with scars. At this time, she glared fiercely at the person in front of her. Yan Yunhua, you slut. It's you who harmed me. It's you. Ah. Yan Yunhua gently squatted down, completely ignoring the bright red color on her sapphire blue palace dress. How could it be me? The secret letters between you and Rui Wang Fu were not handed over to the emperor by me. Could it be? Could it be her? When Su Bingyue heard Yan Yunhua's words, her eyes were full of doubts. No, it must be you. Is there any meaning in trying to quibble at this time? Oh, Su Bingyue, you have been smart all your life. Why are you suddenly muddle-headed at this time? At this point, Yan Yunhua gently leaned against Su Bingyue's ear and whispered, I told Yan Yuqing that concubine Liang will be promoted to empress in a few days, and because concubine Liang, who is in poor health, is unable to bear children, she will choose a member of the imperial family to adopt under her name. For the sake of her son, she can only betray you. In fact, Yan Yuqing's days in Rui Wang Fu were not easy. Dong Fangli did not really like her. Later, he went to great lengths to rescue her only for the child in her belly. Now that the child had been taken away by Dong Fangli had long been disgusted with Yan Yuqing. Especially when he thought that his current situation was all because of this woman, Dong Fangli had the heart to kill her. Therefore, Yan Yuqing's days in Rui Wang Fu were actually worse than death. At this time, Yan Yunhua, who was in an important position in Xiuning Palace, once again extended a helping hand to her. Yan Yuqing had always thought that Yan Yunhua was still the simple and kind person from back then, so she naturally believed in her words. Thinking of the separation of her mother and son, and then thinking of Dong Fangli's treachery, Yan Yuqing simply went all out. She forged the correspondence between Su Bingyue and Dong Fangli, stamped it with the seal of Rui Wang Fu, and then gave all the criminal evidence to Yan Yunhua. Yan Yunhua, you have really changed. Hearing Yan Yunhua's words, Su Bingyue raised her eyes and looked at the familiar face in front of her. The person in front of her was still the same person, but her eyes no longer had the familiar warmth from that day. People change. I was forced to change by you. Now, if Yan Yunhua's experience was written into a book, it could definitely be called A Virgin Mary's Counterattack. After saying this, Yan Yunhua slowly stood up and coldly turned to leave. Steward Wang told me to send her on her way today. Let her die quickly. After speaking, Yan Yunhua left without looking back. Yan Yunhua. You will die a horrible death. Yan Yunhua, even if Lu Mushuan comes out, he won't like you anymore. Behind her, Su Bingyue's increasingly vicious curse was heard. Yan Yunhua's expression didn't change as she came out of the punishment hole. The autumn sun sprinkled on Yan Yunhua's face. Yan Yunhua vaguely remembered that at this time last year, she met Lu Mushuan for the first time in the Imperial Hospital. Mushuan, Xiao Wan. I did it. Tomorrow, I can go to the Imperial Clan Court to pick you up. Perhaps, the current me will make you feel bored and disgusted, but for the things I want to protect, I, Yen Yunhua, will never regret it. The next day, the autumn air was crisp and the sky was blue. Yen Yunhua, dressed in a neat and clean palace dress, quietly waited at the gate of the Imperial Clan Court. As the door slowly opened, the two familiar figures finally slowly appeared in front of her. Yen Yunhua stood in the same place without moving. At this time, her mood was excited, and besides the excitement, there was only endless panic. She felt that Su Wan was so kind and Lu Muxuan was so gentle. Now, she was no longer worthy of being Su Wan's sister, let alone being loved by Lu Muxuan. Yunhua. Seeing that Yen Yunhua had been standing in the same place, Lu Muxuan quickly stepped forward and suddenly hugged her in his arms. In fact, whatever she did in the palace, Wang Yi would report to Su Wan every day. Su Wan would also chat with Lu Muxuan every once in a while. Everything that Yen Yunhua thought they didn't know, in fact, they already knew. Looking at the two people hugging each other under the sun, Su Wan quietly walked to the side. And, if someone came to pick her up at this time, wouldn't it be like the happy ending in the TVB TV series? Su Wan was just thinking about it. She knew that Su Rui had already transferred Qin Xingbei away from the capital. His Majesty the Emperor would not give any predecessor the slightest chance to counterattack. It's time to leave. In this world, Su Wan had always lived like a saint, but this world also let her see a lot of things that she had not seen in other worlds before. Is the human heart good or evil? Was there really no good reward for doing good deeds? In fact, this is like loyalty and filial piety. Foolish loyalty and filial piety will only make things worse. As long as each of us abides by our own principles and has a clear conscience, it's fine. Xiao Wan. The azure-blue Tian Kongsha saw a familiar figure coming against the light. He softly called her name, his tone as gentle as ever. Chapter 185. Su Wan didn't expect that Ding Jijia would still be there when she came back from her mission. Moreover, Ding Jijia's eyes were shining and her excited expression was no less than when she saw a handsome guy. She must be crazy, right? Su Wan. Su Wan. Ding Jijia pounced on Su Wan while shouting excitedly, "Male god, my male god. Do you see my male god? Isn't he super handsome, super cool, super stylish? Prince Charming. Ding Jijia, you have a lot of male gods. Which one are you talking about?" Seeing Su Wan's puzzled frown, Ding Jijia immediately extended two fingers and waved them in front of Su Wan. Number 11 over there, number 11 known as the number 1 genius under Su Rui. Su Rui. Su Wan's gaze narrowed and her gaze turned cold. You're asking Su Rui? Your idol. And below Su, what did that mean? Su Wan was pissed. Okay. Ding Jijia's expression changed when she felt the pressure around Su Wan dropping to the freezing point. Fuck. Look at this baby's mouth. Once I get carried away, I forgot about Su Wan's taboo. It said that you can't mention the two words Su in front of her or she'll go berserk. I still have a mission, I'll take my leave first. Ding Jijia saw that the situation was far from good and immediately turned to flee. Looking at Ding Jijia's departing figure, Su Wan looked down at the communication device on her wrist. How did Ding Jijia know that she and Su Rui were doing a mission in the same world? Could it be? Su Wan's face immediately darkened at the thought of her man being missed by Ding Jijia, that love-struck fool. But thinking that Su Rui was with her all day and never looked at other women, Su Wan's mood finally improved a lot. Ding Jijia, you've never been abused by your Adonis before. You'll never know how cold he is. However, Su Wan liked Su Rui, who was as cold as ice. It's fine as long as he only liked her. As for the others, who cares? She rummaged through the communicator for the latest mission. When she saw a certain mission, Su-won's gaze paused and the corner of her mouth revealed a ruminating smile. She had been a lot of exes, but all of them had been used as cannon fodder by her true love. And this mission was quite interesting, because the person who would be killed as cannon fodder was the ex of one's true love. As Su-won chose the mission, Su-rui also connected to the headquarters and directly chose the plane. When Su-rui opened his eyes, he found himself sitting in a spacious and clean laboratory. "Mr. Du, can you input the data now?" When the assistant on the side saw Du-han on the chair open his eyes, he immediately lowered his head and respectfully asked in his ear. "Data?" Su-rui rubbed the space between his eyebrows and slowly stood up, sizing up this seemingly high-tech laboratory. This was a certain high-tech era. In this world, the Du family had trillions of assets and could be said to be as rich as a country. However, the Du family only had 2 young masters. The eldest young master lost his beloved daughter when he was young and had been studying artificial intelligence robots these years. He had always been indifferent to the Du family's industry. The second young master of the Du family, Du Chin, was originally a playboy, but he fell in love with the commoner school belle, Su-won, at first sight during college. Unfortunately, the gap between the rich and poor between the 2 people was too big and this relationship was opposed by the Du family's parents. Su-won had a pair of parents who were born in poverty but were particularly greedy for money, so in the face of the huge breakup fee given by the Du family, they resolutely disappeared with their daughter. After being broken-hearted, Du Chin got drunk with alcohol and was schemed against by the Ling family, who was on the verge of bankruptcy, and had a relationship with the Ling family's daughter, Ling Chiyue. This matter was caught red-handed by major magazines and newspapers under the planning of the Ling family. At this time, Du Chin, who was challenging his parents, simply made the best of his mistake and announced to everyone that he wanted to marry Ling Chiyue as his wife. Ling Chiyue was the female protagonist in this world. She grew up in luxury since she was a child. She, who had a simple personality, got into Du Chen's bed in a muddle-headed manner after being drunk once. Fortunately, Du Chen was a responsible man. He promised in front of all the media that he was willing to marry her. Ling Chiyue, who had a blank emotional world, did not hate Du Chen. After she married into the Du family, she wanted to live a good life with Du Chen, but after they got married, Du Chen would only play with her in front of his parents. Once they were out of the sight of others, he would never touch her. This made Ling Chiyue feel very wronged. She thought that Du Chen still misunderstood that she was a casual person. In the days after that, she tried to be good to Du Chen and tried to get close to his heart, but everything she did was seen by Du Chen as having a deeper meaning. "Isn't everything you do for money? Didn't your Ling family send you to my bed to let me help you through the difficulties? This money is for you, don't disgust me in the future." When Du Chen handed a check to Ling Chiyue with a disdainful look, she finally knew that her sincerity was just a mistake. Ling Chiyue refused Du Chen's check and drove back to the Ling family alone. She wanted to divorce Du Chen. She couldn't stand her sincerity being trampled on like this. Ling Chiyue's decision was fiercely opposed by her family. At this time, Ling Chiyue finally realized the truth of the matter. Chapter 186. Ling Chiyue, do you think you can enter young Master Du's eyes with your beauty? If it weren't for the fact that you look a bit like young Master Du's lover, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to send you to young Master Du's bed. Ling Yinzhou saw that his sister didn't know what was good for her and couldn't help showing his selfish and cold face. At this time, Ling Chiyue was already numb. It turned out that she was not only a tool for her family, but also just a substitute used to fight against his parents in Du Chen's eyes. Ridiculous. Ling Chiyue, who was completely disappointed with her family, drove out the door in a trance. As a result, she encountered a traffic accident on the way. Although she was not hurt, the doctor in the hospital told her that she was pregnant. This child was not blessed, but he was the closest person to Ling Qiue now. She knew that she couldn't go back to the Ling family or the Du family now. Du Qin wouldn't let her give birth to this child. For the sake of the little life in her belly, Ling Qiue did the craziest thing she had done in her life. She took out all her savings, got on a plane alone and left the city where she grew up. Ling Qiue left, an insignificant woman leaving, but it had no effect on Du Qin. 5 years later, Du Chen's parents died in an accident on the plane. Du Qin officially took over the Du clan and became one of the richest young tycoons in the world. Seeing the news about Du Qin in the newspapers and magazines, Su Wan's parents, Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan, had their own thoughts again. Since the Du family's master and madam were no longer around, Du Qin had the final say in the entire Du family. If their daughter went back to him at this time and reconciled with him, then wouldn't the two of them have a meteoric rise in their next life? It had to be said that the two people's little calculations were quite good, but Du Qin was not a fool. He would always find out that they took the money and left. In the end, it was Li Meiwan who thought of a way. She forced Su Wan to act according to her plan and played the trick of injuring herself in front of Du Qin. She forcibly interpreted the couple's greed for money as being forced and cornered by the Du family. Su Wan was a soft-hearted person who didn't have her own opinions. She was obedient to her parents and she had never forgotten Du Qin all these years. She had also fantasized about continuing their relationship. Now that the opportunity was right in front of her, how could she give it up? A year later, Su Wan returned to Yanjing with her parents. At this time, the money given by the Du family had almost been squandered by the couple. The family of 3 could only rent a dilapidated room. Su Wan followed the plan designed by her mother and finally reunited with Du Qin again. Every man has a white moonlight in his heart. When Du Qin met his true love again after so many years, he still couldn't help but be moved. Although Du Qin had some doubts about Su Wan's reason for leaving back then, he didn't think too much about it. Especially when he saw with his own eyes that the Su family was living in poverty, Du Qin simply brought Su Wan's family to the Du family. At this time, Du Han had been in the laboratory and rarely came back. Du Qin was the only one in the Du family. After living in the Du house, Su Jianjun and his wife thought of ways to swindle money from Du Qin while encouraging their daughter to cook rice with Du Qin. But Du Qin was too busy and rarely went home to stay. Even if he did go home occasionally, it would be around midnight. Su Wan lived in the Du family for half a year and never had the chance to further develop with Du Qin. It was not easy to wait until Du Qin's birthday. On this day, Su Wan was ready to dedicate herself to him, but suddenly an uninvited guest broke into the Du family. This uninvited guest was a 5-year-old boy. He had the same face as Du Qin and called Du Qin father as soon as he entered the door. That's right, this was the son Ling Qiue gave birth to for Du Qin, Ling Li, nicknamed Tian Tian. It turned out that just 2 months ago, Ling Qiue, who had been living abroad, also came back. She came back this time to complete the divorce procedures with Du Qin, then settle abroad and let her child go to school there. When the little boy, Tian Tian, learned of his mother's decision, he came to the Du family first, planning to meet his legendary, scumbag father. That's right, although Tian Tian was only 5 years old, he was a genius child. He could speak 18 languages at the age of 5 and could also turn the stock market upside down. He was also good at any kind of hacking technology and could directly invade other countries' security and anti-counterfeiting systems. He was even brothers with international gang bosses. This was the genius baby that the female lead gave birth to for the male lead. No one should be envious, it's useless to be envious. Who told him to have an invincible cheat in his mother's womb? The appearance of little Tian Tian made Du Qin pleasantly surprised and suspicious, but it also made the first crack appear between Su Wan and Du Qin. Su Wan couldn't accept the fact that Du Qin already had such a big son, and after Du Qin confirmed that Tian Tian was his son, he doted on him in every possible way, which made Su Wan even more jealous. Of course, Su Wan was not blinded by jealousy at this time. She also tried to communicate with Tian Tian and tried to find out his mother's identity. How could the genius baby of our female lead's family be compared to a brat from an ordinary family? Little Tian Tian acted cute and pitiful in front of Du Qin, but in front of Su Wan, he kept mocking and deliberately provoking her. Every time, Du Qin happened to see it, making Su Wan speechless. In this way, under the disruption of little Tian Tian, Su Wan, the bad woman whom he regarded as a true love mistress, finally lost Du Qin's heart step by step. Under little Tian Tian's scheme, Su Jianjun and his wife lost a lot of money in gambling. They actually planned to steal the Du family's valuable calligraphy and paintings to sell. In the end, they were naturally caught red-handed and the two people's past and those things from that year were all dug out. After that, things happened naturally. Du Qin and Su Wan broke up, the Su family of 3 were kicked out of the Du family, and then Su Wan became seriously ill. When she recovered from her illness, she anxiously went to the Du clan to find Du Qin with a haggard face and little Tian Tian's family of 3. She saw the harmonious picture of Du Qin, Ling Qiue, and little Tian Tian's family of 3 together. Su Wan, who couldn't stand this stimulation, couldn't help but rush up and question Ling Qiue, the mistress. At this time, Ling Qiue was no longer the simple Miss Ling of the Ling family. Faced with the unreasonable provocation of her rival in love, she just indifferently took out her wedding ring. Du Qin and I are legal husband and wife. Miss Su, do you need me to say who is the mistress? At that time, Su Wan was completely dumbfounded. During the days when she and Du Qin were separated, Su Jianjun and his wife were afraid of provoking her, so they concealed the fact that Du Qin was married from her. So Su Wan didn't know until this moment that Du Qin had been married for a long time during the years they were separated, and the child in front of her was Du Qin's legitimate son. He was definitely not an illegitimate child with a mistress, as she had imagined. Calculating the child's age, this child was born when she left Yanjing. What does this mean? Su Wan, who felt that she had been deceived by everyone, finally walked on the road of despair because of her psychological breakdown. Su Wan's death did not make Du Qin sad for long. With a smart and lovely son like little Tian Tian, Du Qin gradually realized how good Ling Qiue was, so when Ling Qiue was about to sign the divorce papers, the father and son naturally tried to stop her. Later, with his son's divine assistance, Du Qin finally used his hundreds of millions of net worth as a betrothal gift to recapture his lovely wife, and the family of 3 had a happy ending. This is such a touching and joyous story if Su Wan wasn't the former cannon fodder. At this time, the quarrel between Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan in the room had escalated and the two people even began to fight. Both of you, stop. Su Wan suddenly sat up from the bed and looked sharply at the other 2 people in the room. Now you have the ability. Why didn't you 2 look so spirited when you were kicked out of the Du family? Xiao Wan. Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan stopped their movements at the same time. Both husband and wife looked at their daughter, who suddenly had an imposing aura, with a shocked expression. What was going on? Why does Xiao Wan seem to have become a completely different person? Seeing that both of them were looking at her, Su Wan raised her eyebrows slightly. Do you still want to go back to the Du family? Xiao Wan, do you have a way? Hearing Su Wan's words, Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan immediately became excited. At this time, they didn't have time to ask about their daughter's changes. As long as they could live a life of glory and wealth again, they didn't care so much. I naturally have a way, but don't give me any more trouble. I have to wait for an opportunity. Su Wan answered very calmly under the two people's fervent gazes. She was waiting for a person, and that person was naturally Du Han. Chapter 187. Because Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan were cheated of a large sum of money by Little Tiantian's gambling house, the couple still owed a lot of gambling debts, so now the family of three didn't even dare to return to the small house they rented and could only hide in a dirty and messy inn. Nowadays, technology was so advanced that as long as you carried electronic devices on you, it was easy to be found by enemies or debt collectors. In order to avoid such things, the Su family of three didn't even bring a mobile phone card with an electronic chip on them. In the windowless inn room, the air was filled with an unpleasant smell. Su Wan had traveled to so many worlds, but this was the first time she had met such greedy parents. Hearing that Su Wan had a way to return to the Du family, the two people who had just fought fiercely with flushed faces were now squatting in the corner and starting to design their rich and noble life in the future. For parents to act like this, it was simply a classic example of negative teaching materials. While the two were immersed in the imagination of a beautiful future life, Su Wan quietly left the room. After leaving the inn and walking on the wide street, Su Wan took a deep breath. Fortunately, the air outside was fresh enough. On the unfamiliar streets, there were high-tech electronic cars everywhere. This era was very environmentally friendly and all energy could be recycled. Su Wan wandered around the street alone and bought 3 simple and cheap dinner takeaways. But when she returned to the hotel, Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan had long disappeared. The narrow room was very messy and on the fallen chair, there was a scribbled note. Su Wan picked up the note and looked at it. It was left by the debt collectors before they left. The general meaning was that they took Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan away. If their relatives wanted to redeem them, they had to pay at least 100,000 yuan in arrears of interest for this month. Well, is money really not considered money these days? 1 month's interest is 100,000 yuan. Su Wan threw the note aside and looked at the 3 dinners she bought with a melancholy face. What a waste, she bought 2 more. 2 whole dinners. As for the safety of Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan, Su Wan wasn't worried. Those debt collectors wanted money more than their lives. If the couple was caught, they would suffer a little. It would be good for them to remember. She simply cleaned the room. Thinking that she had already paid a month's rent, Su Wan also gave up on the idea of changing a place to live. She opened the door to let the smell in the room out and then ate her dinner. As for the 2 extra portions, Su Wan finally took them out and gave them to the inn's lady boss and the receptionist at the front desk. The lady boss, who had always been stingy, was originally angry because of that group of people making a racket in the evening. After taking Su Wan's dinner, her cold face gradually turned into a smile. Just like this, Su Wan stayed in this small inn. The lady boss of the inn was also a stock investor. Su Wan had nothing to do and helped her look at stocks. Seeing that Su Wan really had some ability to help her make money, the lady boss's attitude towards her became better and better. In the end, she even took the initiative to help Su Wan change to a more spacious room with windows. At this time, Su Wan didn't have any spare money in her wallet. It wasn't that she didn't think of entering the market herself, but with her current funds, it was too little to start a business. It was true that a penny stumped a hero. Su Wan had no choice but to continue to make her presence felt at the lady boss's side. The favorability was raised. The lady boss not only gave her a good room to live in, but she would also eat with Su Wan with great enthusiasm every day. After more than half a month, Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan finally came back. The 2 of them looked extremely miserable at this time. It seemed that they had been abused by those debt collectors. Xiao Wan, why don't you go save your mother? As soon as she entered the room, Li Meiwan, who was disheveled and dirty, began to cry herself hoarse. Su Wan frowned at the horse crying, what can I do to save you? Su-won dug into her pocket and only took out a few hundred yuan in change. This is all my assets. Don't you know what our family situation is like? You don't have money, but doesn't young Master Do have it? You go cry, beg, and make a scene. On the side, Su Jianjun sat on the bed with a look of resentment on his face. I've been driven out by Du Qin. He's holding his wife and child right now, having fun. Fun. Living. Will he care about my life and death? Can you guys grow some brains? Su-won's face also sank at this time. Besides, aren't you guys fine now without missing an arm or a leg? What were you thinking when you borrowed this large sum of money? Have you thought about the consequences of not paying it back? At that time, Li Meiwan stopped crying and looked at Su-won with a complicated expression. At that time, didn't we have the Du family to support us? Who knew that young Master Du would turn hostile just like that? He's not a man at all. As she spoke, Li Meiwan began to curse Du Qin endlessly until her throat was hoarse and she was tired of cursing, so she stopped. As for Su Jianjun, he took out a pack of cigarettes from who knows where and began to sit at the head of the bed to smoke. The unpleasant smell of smoke made Su-won wrinkle her nose. She stepped forward and grabbed General Su's cigarette, pinched it out, and threw it into the trash can. What are you doing? Su Jianjun saw that his cigarette was taken away and immediately glared at Su-won. What do you think I'm doing? If you two don't listen to me, I can give you glory, splendor, and wealth. Otherwise, you two can get lost. In the original plot, after Su-won committed suicide, her greedy parents only knew how to make an issue out of this matter. They took the opportunity to take a large sum of money from Du Qin and then flew away. In their hearts, there might not be any so-called family affection at all. Su-won naturally wouldn't be polite to such parents. You damn girl, you're rebelling against the heavens. Su Jianjun immediately stood up angrily when he heard Su-won's words, but as soon as his eyes came into contact with Su-won's cold, sharp, and emotionless eyes, the anger in Su Jianjun's heart was immediately scared away. Greedy people are mostly timid, and Su Jianjun is actually as timid as a mouse. You can see that he usually yells happily, but he's actually very timid. Okay. At this time, Li Meiwan also came forward to smooth things over. Xiao Wan, my good daughter, we'll listen to you, we'll all listen to you, okay? Tell us, what do you want us to do? What you have to do is very simple. During this period, you just need to guard outside the Du family's courtyard. When you see eldest young Master Du coming back, you rush up to recognize him. Recognize him. Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan both looked puzzled when they heard Su-won's words. But Su-won just smiled with a face full of confidence. Everyone in Yanjing's upper class knew that eldest young Master Du was a strict and slow man with high IQ and low EQ. When he gave up business to do research, Master Du and Madame Du only made one request, that was to let him get married immediately and then give them a grandson or granddaughter, so that the two people would no longer interfere with his life. Soon after, Du Han brought a little girl to the two people, along with a paternity test report, proving that the baby girl was his biological daughter. The little girl was naturally Du Han's daughter, Du Yu. No one knew who her mother was. Many people speculated that the girl was Du Han's surrogate mother, but in fact, the child was indeed a test tube baby. Her biological father was indeed Du Han, but the biological mother was unknown. In fact, only Du Han knew about this matter. When he decided to do test tube baby, he specially chose the frozen eggs of a young woman who died because of an accident, so as to avoid any awkward and complicated situation because of meeting the child's mother one day. At that time, Du Han did not think that Du would leave him one day. Du Han was a very strict and introverted person. He poured endless love into his only daughter, but Du died because of an accident when she was 4 years old. Since then, Du Han has become more closed off. He tried his best to resurrect Du and even created a high-tech robot with super artificial intelligence, Du. This robot's face is very similar to Du Han, and even its age is calculated according to Du's age. For such a crazy brother, Du Chen can only sigh at the impermanence of the world. As for the robot, Du Chen did not accept it. There were many intelligent robots working as servants in the Du family. In Du Chen's view, a machine would always be a machine. No matter how intelligent she would never become a real human being. When everyone rejected Du, Ling Qiue liked her very much. Perhaps because she was a single mother, Ling Qiue could understand Du Han's feelings very well. The two people slowly became good friends in contact. Du Han, who was in his early 30s and had never been in love, also quietly fell in love with Ling Qiue at this time. Chapter 188. For the sake of future glory and wealth, Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan followed Su Wan's instructions and went out early and returned late every day to squat outside the Du family's house. These two sneaky figures had long attracted little Ling Li's attention. Since successfully driving away the little mistress family, Ling Li also spent a lot of effort to persuade his mother, Ling Qiue, to move back to the Du family. Of course, the current Ling Qiue still can't forgive Du Qin. She still wholeheartedly wanted to divorce Du Qin, and little Tian Tian, who realized that his father was not so scum, was now trying to get his mother and father back together. As the saying goes, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. He didn't believe that the two people living together all day long couldn't spark some sparks of love. Of course, the premise is that there are no blind people who come to make trouble. This little Shota is very cruel and merciless, Dad. On this day, little Tian Tian came back from kindergarten in Du Chen's car. Seeing the two familiar figures not far away, little Tiantian's eyes flashed. Dad, those two people are sneaking around outside our house all day long. Are they trying to kidnap me? I'm so scared. The kindergarten teacher said that there are a lot of bad people outside now. Bad people? Du Qin followed little Tiantian's gaze and saw two sneaky and familiar figures. Isn't that Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan? Kidnap? Du Chen's heart trembled. He remembered that the couple seemed to owe a lot of money outside. They wandered around the Du family's house all day and didn't cry and beg him to lend them money like before. Could it be that they really had evil intentions and wanted to kidnap his son? At the thought of this, Du Chen's eyes immediately turned cold and gloomy. After the car drove into the Du family's villa, the door slowly closed. Su Jianjun and his wife, who had waited for another day in vain, were about to leave. Who knew that at this time, a few tall and powerful bodyguards suddenly rushed out from the side door of the Du family's villa. They knocked the couple to the ground and dragged them directly into the Du family's back garden. At this time, Du Qin had changed into a set of home clothes and was sitting elegantly at the wooden table in the garden, tasting red wine. Second young master, they are here. Several bodyguards in black threw Su Jianjun and his wife in front of Du Qin. Both of them were stunned when they saw the second young master of the Du family. They were instinctively a little afraid, but when they remembered what Su Wan had told them, Li Meijuan's heart calmed down a lot. Afraid? Afraid of what? His daughter had said that she had young master backing her up. But the problem was, where was eldest young master Du? Looking at the two people in front of him meaningfully, Du Chen raised his hand and the housework robot on the side quickly helped him remove the wine glasses and bottles. Tell me, why have you been wandering around my house? What do you want? Don't tell me, you still want to steal from my Du family. No, no, no. Hearing Du Chen's words, Su Jianjun immediately trembled and hurriedly denied it. This good-for-nothing. Li Meiwan glared at him and then straightened her back slightly. We are just strolling around here. Does this whole street belong to your family? Oh. Du Qin smiled evilly. That's right, this entire street is the property of my Du family. Li Meiwan was speechless. How could she forget about the Du family's financial resources? She made a sad face. Even if the whole street belongs to your family, you still have to let others go, right? Li Meiwan had made up her mind to quibble. She would never reveal her true purpose. Seeing Li Meiwan being so stubborn, Du Qin looked at Su Jianjun, who was trembling with fear. Just these two people want to kidnap me. Are you fucking kidding me? Having preliminarily determined that the risk of these two people was very small, Du Qin was also relieved, but for the sake of caution, he decided to let these two people disappear from now on. How much gambling debt do you owe? I'll help you pay it back, as a condition of exchange. Du Qin leaned down and looked at the two people coldly. Don't ever appear in front of me again, let alone near my house. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite to you. This. Su Jianjun was a little moved and turned to look at his wife inquiringly. You didn't pay attention. At this moment, Li Meiwan felt that her life was a failure. How much water did she have in her head to marry such a wicked thing? Young Master Du, we don't need you to help us pay back the money. Our family Xiaowan said that her husband will help us pay back the money and will also support us in our retirement, so we can't accept your kindness. Speaking of this, Li Meiwan felt that she was a lot more confident. That's right. It's this feeling. This old lady is destined to become young Master Du's mother-in-law and doesn't care about that little bit of profit. What do you mean don't appear here in the future? When my daughter marries into the Du family, I will be half the owner of this place. This garden, this villa, this swimming pool, everything here will not belong to you, Du Qin. It will all be ours in the future, it will all be ours. The greed in Li Meijuan's eyes flashed and Du Qin just raised the corner of his lips and smiled coldly when he caught a glimpse of her expression. Could it be that she still dreams of marrying her daughter into a rich and powerful family? Du Qin did not deny that he liked and loved Su Wan deeply. Even before Tian Tian appeared, he thought of giving her a status and living with her for the rest of his life. But the appearance of little Tian Tian changed everything. A woman who lies in front of him and bullies his son when he is not at home, is she really worthy of his love and affection? Back then, he must have been blind to think that she was a good girl. Du Qin believed that everything he saw and found out was the truth. He had already given up on Su Wan. Similarly, he only felt deep disgust towards Su Wan's parents. Since you don't need my help, that's even better, but I hope you remember what I said, don't appear in this vicinity again, otherwise I'll make you look good. Du Qin coldly waved his hand and several bodyguards immediately rushed over to drag Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan outside. At this time, a black extended car suddenly drove in slowly from outside the gate. The streamlined limited edition extended car stopped directly outside the garden. The black door slowly opened and the first thing that caught everyone's eyes was a pair of spotless leather shoes, followed by well-ironed trousers and slender and straight legs. A man in a black suit slowly got out of the car. His suit was neatly dressed, just like him. At first glance, he gave people a very rigorous and elegant feeling. Eldest young master. The bodyguards in the garden all bowed their heads respectfully when they saw the man's figure. This is Du family's eldest young master, Du Han. Li Meijuan's eyes lit up when she heard this. She suddenly broke free from the bodyguard beside her and rushed to Du Han in a few steps. Son-in-law. We've finally waited for you. Son-in-law. Su Rui had just gotten out of the car when he saw a woman with disheveled hair running straight towards him. He was about to slap her away when he heard the woman call him son-in-law. Aunt, where did you come from? Su Rui's face was cold and he frowned slightly. At this time, Du Chin on the side was also anxious. He knew his elder brother's rigorous temperament and naturally couldn't watch Li Meiwan, this shrew, mess around here. Come, drag this crazy woman out for me. Du Chin growled coldly, and the bodyguards, who felt derelict in their duties, immediately rushed forward to grab Li Meiwan's arm. At this time, Li Meiwan couldn't care so much and quickly shouted at Su Rui, son-in-law, say something. It was our family Xiao Wan who asked me to look for you. How did you? Wait. Su Rui suddenly said coldly and walked elegantly to Li Meiwan step by step. You said that Xiao Wan asked you to look for me. You are Su Wan's mother. Li Meiwan. Yes, yes, yes. Son-in-law, you know me. Seeing Su Rui call out her name at once, Li Meiwan's panic-stricken little heart instantly returned to normal. The more she called him son-in-law, the smoother it was. Su Rui waved his hand and motioned for the bodyguards to retreat. Where is Xiao Wan? Take me to see her. Big brother. At this time, Du Chin had already stood up and came to the side of several people. The strange thing in front of him made Du Chin somewhat inexplicable. And at this time, something that surprised him even more happened. The other door of the extended car behind Su Rui was slowly pushed open, and a little girl who looked 70 to 80% similar to him jumped out of the car with a happy face. Dad, are we going to find Mom? Hurry up and go. Susu misses Mom so much. This is. Du Chin at least knew what his elder brother was doing crazily, but Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan didn't know. At this time, seeing Su Xiaosu pulling the corner of Su Rui's clothes and shouting to go find Su Wan, the husband and wife were instantly petrified. Chapter 189. The small hotel where Su Wan's family lived was in the old suburbs of Yanjing. Although the traffic here was also very developed, in this era of superinformation, such old apartment-style hotels had long been eliminated, and the people who came and went here were naturally people who did not live a very wealthy life. Because of this, when the black limited edition Silver Wing Night limousine drove over, the entire street was in an uproar. Have you heard of Silver Wing Night? Have you seen the real Silver Wing Night? It is said that there is only one in the entire country. Truly unique, truly unparalleled in the world. Most people had only seen this car on a 3D projection screen, but the shock they felt at this time was far beyond what they felt at that time. This was a real top car. A group of onlookers who loved cars as much as their lives could not help but chase after this black melody all the way. Then they watched the Silver Wing Knight, which represented status and wealth, slowly stop at the door of an inconspicuous hotel. The car door slowly opened and the surrounding onlookers couldn't help holding their breath. Everyone knew that this car belonged to the Du family, and the owner of this car was the extremely mysterious Du family's eldest son, Du Han, who rarely appeared in public. Ah! Amidst the exclamations, the first to get off the car was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He was wearing extremely ordinary casual clothes, but his expression was very arrogant at the moment. Following him was another middle-aged woman who looked younger than him. These two people. Some people had already recognized that the people who had just gotten off the car were the tenants of this hotel. Are they relatives of the Du family? At this time, the lady boss, who had heard the noise outside from the front desk, also ran to the door. She looked at the cool limited edition luxury car in front of her, and then looked at Su Jianjun, who was standing in front of the car with an arrogant look on his face. Her beautiful eyes turned and she immediately turned to the lobby and shouted softly, "Little sister Xiao Wan, little sister Xiao Wan, your parents seem to have brought guests." Although Su Jianjun was timid, his tone was very big. When he had nothing to do in the hotel, he liked to brag to the surrounding residents that his son-in-law was young Master Du. He also always said how luxurious the Du family's villa was, how big the swimming pool was, and how big the servants at home were all intelligent robots. Of course, the people living in this small apartment hotel were all poor or people who had suffered major setbacks in their lives. Everyone gathered together and chatted casually. No one took Su Jianjun's words seriously at all. But now, the lady boss's mind began to move. Could it be that Su Jianjun wasn't bragging? Su Wan's husband was really young Master Du. At this time, Su Wan also slowly walked to the door. Many people who had chatted with Su Jianjun beat their chests and stamped their feet in regret. If they had believed Su Jianjun's words and befriended him, would they have been able to make a comeback with the help of the Du family? It has to be said that there are a lot of people in this world who like to daydream. Of course, it wasn't just the people in the hotel. Even Su Jianjun and Li Meiwan were still in a dream when they re-entered the Du family's luxurious villa hall. They really came back. Big brother, you are. At this time, Du Chen's family of 3 had just finished dinner. When Du Chen saw that Su Rui had brought Su Wan's family in, his whole face changed. Little Tian Tian, who had been nestled in his mother's arms and acting cute, also looked at Su Wan with hostility. Ling Qiue, on the other hand, seemed very calm. Of course, she was also very curious about Su Wan, so her eyes stayed on Su Wan for several seconds. Ling Qiue remembered that Ling Yinzhou once said that she looked like Du Chen's lover back then, but time changes people. Now the two standing together couldn't see any similarities at all. In the past 6 years, Ling Qiue has been constantly changing and moving forward. And the original Su Wan was actually still immersed in the memory of the past, making no progress. Seeing Du Chen and his son's undisguised hostility towards Su Wan, Su Rui's eyes also turned cold. He raised his hand and put it around Su Wan's shoulder. I'm bringing my wife home. Do you have any objections? Wife? As soon as this remark came out, even Ling Qiue, who had been very calm, was dumbfounded. Du Han has a wife. Didn't he never get married or had a girlfriend? No, that's not right. He once had a daughter. That girl later. Thinking of this, Ling Qiue looked suspiciously at Su Xiaosu, who was following Su Wan closely and looked almost identical to Su Rui. And the amount of information is a bit too much. The female lead is also incompetent. Big brother, what are you talking about? At this moment, Du Chen's face had become very ugly. Although he quickly thought of a possibility, he quickly denied that absurd and boring idea. You don't understand Chinese. Hearing Du Chen's question, Su Rui raised his eyebrows again and said calmly and indifferently, Su Wan is my daughter's biological mother, and from this moment on, she is my wife, the eldest young mistress of the Du family. Su Wan is Du's mother. Isn't that the mysterious woman from 8 years ago? Du Chen looked at Su Wan with an embarrassed expression. Su Wan, tell me, is what my brother said true? 8 years ago, Du Chen didn't know Su Wan at all. If she was already with his elder brother at that time, then why did she fall in love with him later? For a moment, all kinds of conspiracy theories flashed through Du Chen's mind. Hearing his question, Su Wan just smiled slightly and said unhurriedly, First, please call me sister-in-law in the future. Don't call me directly by my name. Thank you for your cooperation. Second, what my husband said is naturally true. Why would he lie to you? That's right, Mom and Dad won't lie. Su Xiaosu, who was on the side, hurriedly took this opportunity to make her presence known in front of the male lead. At this time, the little genius Ling Li, who had been quietly paying attention to the development of the situation, also set his eyes on Su Xiaosu for the first time. This was the first encounter between the little boy and the little lowly. There was no predestined tit-for-tat, Mars colliding with Earth, and there would not be the legendary love at first sight between two innocent young people. Ling Li, don't look at how she's 2 years older than me. Listening to the tone of her voice, this genius knows that her IQ isn't high and it's not a problem at all. Su Xiaosu, little friend over there, what are you looking at? If you look at me again, I won't give you candy to eat. I only have one piece of candy. Woo, so pitiful. Although a robot can't taste sweet when eating candy, I just like it.